top of the show, I always bring a little bit of news. And I know that our audio listener fans over there in the X spaces are curious about what we even do. If you're new joining us here, if you're new around, we talk about all sorts of things, news, all sorts of things, conspiracies, and world related. This one today is going to be a little bit heavy handed and heavy hearted. So if you are faint of the heart, hold on tight. But DARPA recently unleashed a colossal spy drone. It is a completely unmanned surveillance ship that's 580,000 pounds and is powered by seawater. So this thing can go on forever. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It's a daunting piece of equipment. So on the verge of the news from the Israeli and Iran war, I wonder what is being released into the wild as we speak.
I know, right?
With DARPA and Lockheed and Martin all frantically trying to find the new technology to win the wars or win the world, if you will. And all of our listeners who typically tune in every single Friday and listen to us regularly on all of the audio podcast platforms, you know that I am obsessed with uranium and nuclear stuff.
Yeah.
You know it. And you love it. And I love it.
You love it.
I love it a lot. They have recently announced how this uranium liquid engines for rocket ships work. And it's pretty high tech, dude.
It's pretty high.
It's pretty cool, honestly. They have rotating uranium engines that have lasers that power the engine, and it makes it incredibly fast and incredibly dynamic.
Dang.
So, I mean, with all that being said, I always bring you news at the top of the show to let everybody crawl in, say hi, what's up in the chat, say hi, and then we get usually started right away. Ben, do you have anything you want to input at the top of the show? Or
no, I do not.
Not at the moment.
I just want to get into the topic, but yeah, I was letting you finish out your thing.
Yeah, I mean that's all I got for the top of the show today.
Well, dope. Well, as you guys know, we are doing the Franklin scandal, and this is a pretty
it's heavy.
It's extremely heavy of a topic because it has to do with child sex trafficking, and this is something that started back basically in the 80s, and they went to about the early 90s. But that's just for if you were to isolate the Franklin scandal, just that with that title, that is 80s and 90s. But the thing is, it actually goes beyond that because it starts to actually play, and like there's things about this that start popping up through all the way up in like 2003, 2010. And that's because of Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
Because there is pretty significant connections between him and all of this. So, with the Franklin scandal. And Discovery Channel had a documentary that they were going to release, and that got scrubbed out of nowhere. So let's how we're going to do this is for everything to kind of like make sense, and pretty much so you guys have an idea of how tonight's going to go. I kind of broke up all of my research and notes into 6 sections going in chronological order. So basically every time we go through a section, that's when we're going to stop and then talk the basic. And, she is awesome enough to help co-host tonight. And pretty much if anyone has any questions or wants to give input or, whatever.
We have an amazing guest speaker that was brought to our attention. Her name's Ali Hopper. She is a counter-traffic consultant and speaker over there in the east side of America. So it's going to be a very interesting topic. I'm very happy she can join us too. It's going to be very interesting.
It's going to be awesome. I'm very excited about that because I actually got to speak with Cody a little bit before. He's in here too. I believe he's as a co-host as well. But I feel very fortunate because I got to talk to Cody a little bit earlier and basically told him everything we were planning on doing tonight, and he's got a lot of passion behind it. I do too.
As do I.
But yeah, so Cody being clutch like he always does, he went and he helped us find other co-hosts. So huge shout out to Cody for just being awesome all the time. All the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's set the stage about this.
Please do. Let's get into it, huh?
Okay. So this all took place in Omaha, Nebraska. And the key kind of like entity to kind of like for this particular part is the Franklin Community Federal Credit Union.
What?
Yeah. And the main person that we're going to be pretty much dissecting about this is Lawrence E. King Jr.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, and if you wanted to know a little bit more about that credit union, just a little side fact: the credit union was intended to serve Omaha's black community, but was allegedly used as basically as a front for laundering money and facilitating like other illegal and illicit activities.
Yeah,
It was
absolutely.
just a front for it.
And wasn't Lawrence like a really big activist in the Republican community back then as well?
I didn't look into that side of it, to be
Gotcha.
honest. I was really just focusing on the inner circles. I
Yeah.
mean, don't get me wrong, I have other notes, so like I don't have all of this memorized. That's why I made sure to bring all my notes.
It is a lot of information.
Yeah, it's a lot. And I know with Lawrence E. King Jr., he was I know he was prominent in the Republican side of things, but I think it had to do more with charities.
Yeah, he was an
and
activist. He was an
fundraisers,
activist,
off the top
right?
of my head. I know I'm about to run into it in my notes, but yeah. So with that being said, let's start digging into this a bit more, because there's two other key figures in this whole narrative, and that's Paul Bonacci, I believe is how you say his name. It's Bonacci. He is a former child victim, and he's also a whistleblower on this. He testified under oath that he was abused by like all these high-level individuals, and then he was flown to places like Washington D.C. for sex parties.
That's pretty
Yeah.
topical right now, considering
Yeah.
the Diddy scandal going on right now, right?
Yep. And then one other part about it is that he claimed he was forced into the ring and trafficked across multiple state lines. So basically, he was just being ushered. He was a young boy, and he was getting ushered across multiple states to have sex with high political figures and people of power. Very fucked up.
So-
Sorry, you were about to say something.
Yeah. So what exactly is the Franklin scandal, right? Like, have we broken that down exactly? Like,
No,
what it is entirely?
If you just want to paint it
Just
out.
a
Yeah.
brief explanation. It's a financial mismanagement investigation that then brought on and uncovered claims of a broader criminal network involving child prostitution, child abuse, and child trafficking.
Mhm.
This allegedly reached high levels of government and society in its whole. So they would find children's in foster care, and then they would take these children and just smuggle them across the country to meet with high-level officials and probably celebrities, I imagine, and a lot of other very critical members of society. They got away with it for quite a while, and this all started because they were seeing Larry King Jr., Lawrence, embezzling $40 million. So we're looking into that first.
Yeah.
And then these allegations sparked intense public and media interest, and that's where it brings us to it, as people
Yeah.
were claiming it to be a hoax.
Yeah. Sorry, one other thing. So one of the other key people that we are about to, because I'm about to just start going.
Okay, right on. Yeah.
So I'm just trying to make sure not to leave anything out, because I don't want anyone to get caught off guard. So Alicia Owen is another key person in this part of it. She is also a victim who came forward and then later served prison time for perjury after her allegations were supposedly, or allegedly, they found evidence that discredited her by authorities.
Oh.
But her her being put in prison was extremely criticized, but it made her go quiet, because a lot of people pointed out that basically it looked very, because when I was digging into it, it really did paint the picture that she was, they were trying to do the same to Paul,
Gotcha.
but they weren't able to do it as well because his had more validating things behind it, whereas hers had more openings to be manipulated and like basically torn down to say like you're making it up, type thing, because it's just how it played out, which is horrible. So, but you had mentioned alleged activities a little
Yes.
bit. Did you mention the children from boys? Sorry. So children from
I did not mention the ages of them at all.
Okay, so the alleged activities was child sex trafficking, blackmail operations, satanic ritual abuse, ritual type
Murder.
things, drug trafficking and laundering money and all that stuff. Now, when it comes to the child sex trafficking, that's really going to focus on the children from Boys Town Orphanage and other kind of like backgrounds in there were allegedly groomed, abused, and trafficked across state lines. Like we're talking tons of kids. So just to put that out there so everyone knows about it. Yeah, and then I'm about to. Oh, sorry. So the official investigations, though. So we're going to be pulling open Nebraska State Foster Care Review Board.
No shit.
Yeah, so they initiated the investigation after receiving a whole bunch of disturbing reports of like basically child abuse tied to King's inner circle, and then Franklin Committee and Nebraska Legislature. So basically, Senator Lawrence Schmidt and later Senator John DeCamp. They're the ones who led the Franklin Committee and Nebraska Legislature on it. They hired private investigator Gary Caradori, who claimed to have uncovered damning evidence before he was mysteriously murdered, and all of it disappeared. He was literally like he died, and all of his evidence, everything he.
So he mysteriously died, huh?
Yeah, it was just like So we'll get to that part, and then we'll get on to it. I'd rather just to start opening it up because that was just like my precursor. I want to make sure to state
this
these
Lawrence
things.
King Jr. fella is still alive and not in prison.
He is?
Yep. He is 81 years old and he is only penalized for 15 years of his life.
Yeah.
For the things that he did.
Pretty messed up. It's pretty messed up.
I wonder if that ties into what we're going to get into a little bit later about the CIA investigations and all the other implications of blackmailing.
Yeah. And we're going to be getting into that.
Oh, yeah.
Too. Yeah, it's all in there.
So this scandal, the Franklin scandal, has ties in with the CIA and a lot of others as well. So it wasn't just necessarily this individual, this monster of a man committing all these things on his own, right? Mm-hmm. The allegations and implications are relying also on the CIA and our own government facilitating this.
Yeah. Yep. You ready?
I am. Yeah.
Okay, let's go. So, all right, we're going to start off in basically 1986. Okay. So in 1986, social worker Julie Walters, basically she noticed something was really off while she was reviewing foster care case files. And basically what she picked up on was that children in separate foster homes from different counties with there was literally no known connections, all describing the exact same scenario, like the exact same. And basically what that was being taken to parties with wealthy white men, given alcohol, drugs, subjected to rape and other forms of abuse, flown to other states, including Washington, D.C., Colorado, and California for quote unquote special visits. And this was repeated and mentioned. What was also repeated was mentions of a man named Larry King. That his name always was in each one, every single one.
Not the radio news host or the talk show host.
No, different
Larry King.
Different Larry King, but his name kept coming up, Larry King Jr. or whatever.
Yes.
His name kept coming up in every single one, and all of these kids had zero known connections to each other. Like they're all in different areas, different places. So now that that's been said, just so you know, none of these were isolated claims. They all mirrored one of another, and basically all of it used consistent names, locations, language, the works. Like everything was the same. Some children, children even described being filmed during the abuse, and these tapes were used for blackmail. Yeah. They were.
Sounds very familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sounds quite familiar. Yeah. And then Julie Walters reported her findings. She basically said she expected there to be outrage, and all she got was silence. And then what came right after the silence was just a whole bunch of pushback on her from all different types of sources. And not even just sources, we're talking about platforms, news, the works. Like we're talking about people who run news agencies and crap.
That's awful.
Yeah, yeah. But moving on from that, we should probably talk about who Larry King really was.
Please, yeah. He was a former banker, right?
I believe he was, yes. Because he was part of the credit union, all that stuff. So Lawrence, he also his real name is Lawrence E. King.
Correct.
He just goes by Larry King. Yeah, Lawrence E. King Jr. So he was the manager of the Franklin Community Federal Credit Union. And he was definitely more than a banker, just so you know. He was a well-connected, basically political player and Republican fundraiser who sang the national anthem at both the 1984 and the 1988 GOP national conventions.
Holy cow.
Yeah. This guy he was in bed with everybody. If anyone doesn't understand that about politics yet, it doesn't matter if you're left or right. Behind closed doors, all of those politicians, doesn't matter what party they're with, they're all clinking
all in bed
glasses
with each
together,
other, right?
eating together, like they're buddies behind closed door. It's just a dog and pony show what we get.
Yeah, yeah. And like I just said, they're all in bed with each other, right? And in this case, they were, well, for lack of better terms, they were literally in bed with one another.
Yeah.
And doing atrocious acts of criminal activity. So
It looks like you're about to say something.
I know that's basically, I was just adding on to what you had to say there.
Okay. Let's say I got more.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay, so thank you. Thank you, sir. So Lawrence E. I'm just going to start referring to him Lawrence because I'm going to end up, now you got me thinking about Larry King, all decrepit there, doing his interviews with his shoulders going farther and farther above his head as years go on. You know what I'm talking about, where he's always just like this all the time, and then he just shrinks down in his seat. So Lawrence E. King Jr., he appeared as basically this like perfect rag, it's like basically like a perfect rag to riches kind of like success story, essentially. Like he came from nothing and worked his way up and built his way into things. Because he was a black man from North Omaha, right? Rising into Republican elite circles. So, but basically like the public persona, it essentially was his perfect way to mask a complex operation and lifestyle. But that's all it really was, because, he had things going on with all the alleged money laundering, sex trafficking, and then insane levels of blackmail that were just, everyone was getting blackmailed, dude. He was like Oprah with going like, you get a book or you get $1, He was like, you get a blackmail. That's essentially what he was doing.
Gotcha.
So yeah, pretty rough. Now under King's like leadership, essentially, millions disappeared from the credit union. So, but no one in the local or federal financial system sounded the alarm until years later. Why? Well, King was 100% protected, and he was literally protected by image, money, and basically because what he knew about other people. Sounds a lot like someone else we know.
Yeah,
that people talk about.
Yeah,
Jeffrey Epstein. He had things on everybody. Now, I'm gonna move on. So that was kind of like how I wanted to make sure to paint Lawrence King. That's all I got on him, or not all I have on him, but that's my summary for like who is he in that regard. So the whistleblowers. Let's talk about that.
You brought up one of them already, the Bonacci fellow.
Paul. That's who I was about to open up the can of worms on. So Paul Bonacci. So he was former Boys Town resident and diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder, or DID, which is a result of long-term traumatic events happening when you're a child. It's like consistent trauma, things happening to you psychologically and physically, for so long, repetitively. This is a type of disorder that gets formed out of it. Well, he claimed he was a part of a network of all these different like abused and sex trafficked children. And he was used to blackmail powerful men. Like they would record the act or get some type of, photography or video of Paul as a young boy with these men, get recorded, and then it would just get sent out to all these people and blackmail them. Well, he alleged he was forced to participate in all these different sex parties, pornography, and recruitment of other children. So basically, they would come to him and say, hey, if you want a better life where you're not having to do the things you don't want to do, you have to go get other kids for us. That's essentially, and he was a young kid. And those, children, if anyone has read anything about these things, like when you're a little kid and you're like getting abused like that, And then all of a sudden you hear like, well, how could a child, like, you know, someone who's that's happening to goes and tries to recruit other kids? Well, they're a child and they're being
Yes.
manipulated, and it's kind of like the whole, you know, like if you have an abusive parent, because these are foster children.
Mhm.
None of these are you know, orphans. They don't got any family, don't have an actual mom and dad. So it's like, you know, think about it like this, just you know, sidestep, and you know, it's like your mother or your father. You could have been someone who grew up with an abusive mom or dad, and when you're growing up with them, when you know, at some point you finally free yourself, right? And you're like, I don't want anything to do with you, you're a horrible person. But that may not be until you're 20 years old or 17 years old, but you didn't leave them before because you didn't know that you could.
You also, you
It's like an
probably,
entrapment
a lot of the
type
times you
thing,
probably
yeah.
couldn't as well, because
Yeah.
you are relying on these individuals for food and shelter and clothing and whatnot. Granted, in this individual,
Or scared you're gonna die.
or scared that you're going to die.
Yeah.
Exactly. In this, like in this individual's case, Paul's, he was probably scared for his life. They're probably threatening him that they're going to kill him if they don't
Yeah.
go and get other individuals, other
Yeah.
children to join the masses. God, I couldn't imagine.
Yeah. And you know,
My heart goes out to these individuals who suffered from this.
like I said, it's just going to get heavier, even heavier as we go on. But one of the things, though, is Paul provided not just names, but he also provided timelines. And then he even gave extreme detailed layouts of homes he had never been to unless he had been trafficked there. Like pretty much he was giving a precise layouts of homes about a particular politician or someone of power that lives 4 states away, and he's a foster, like a 10-year-old foster kid or whatever, 3 states over. How would he know the exact layout of these people's homes?
He's been there before.
Yeah, several times,
Yes.
numerous times. So it's like like I said, with him, it was harder to discredit him because there was too many details like that he could give, and it was irrefutable because they knew the layout of the house.
That's good.
You know.
That's good in that sense.
Yeah.
That he was able to bring to light with validity and evidence to hopefully bring these people down.
Yeah. And so, and like I said earlier, Bonacci would later testify under oath in multiple proceedings, and basically he was also awarded damages in a civil case related to abuse by another high profile individuals. And that the records were sealed on that. I was not able to pull it. Yeah, they have those locked up tight.
Well,
so
of course.
I couldn't pull anything on that to get
Because
details.
if it said like, for instance, Bill Clinton gave Paul Bonacci $15 million, they're not going to let that be seen by the public by any means.
No, not even a little bit, man.
Yeah.
Look at how much they're protecting the client list for Epstein.
Exactly right.
They don't want to let it out because there's pretty much everyone in upper politics is on it.
Well, I
wouldn't be surprised.
They've released some paperwork on it, but that paperwork has already been known to the public.
That was already known, and that was just more of things they found.
That was just mostly people who he had numbers on and addresses on. That's about it.
Now, I know I mentioned Alicia Owen earlier, and I'm going to dive right into that whole narrative with her. So, Alicia Owen, she was another foster child, but she was labeled as a troublemaker in the actual foster system. I kind of took that with a grain of salt because I've known like foster families, like when I've met people, I know people who have done it in the past, like where they took in foster kids, stuff like that. And I know people personally that took in foster kids that those children were essentially labeled as a troublemaker or a problem child.
High risk.
Child was great with them. I think it all has to do with what's going on when they're at the place. If something bad's happening, or, not necessarily a sex thing, but what if they're just getting beat?
Yeah.
Or whatever. Who knows? There's a list could go on, but I kind of took that with a grain of salt because I've seen firsthand how they label a lot of kids. So now she alleged rape and abuse by men tied directly to King and his little inner circle of people.
Oh.
That's why.
Well, what's her name again?
Alicia Owen.
Alicia Owen.
Now her. So the thing is that her testimony matched Bonacci's. Paul, the other whistleblower, it matched his down to places, methods, and people involved. She couldn't give layout of houses though. but not everyone has that type of memory, like that spatial geometric memory where they can like actually go, oh yeah, if you walk in like this and then you turn to the left, and some people don't have that kind of headspace where that's how their brain
Especially under
processes.
intense trauma.
Oh yeah, and there's no telling what was happening when leading up to getting there, and then the act of being there and leaving there. It's
For all we know, this individual could have been drugged up, could have been black bagged over their head.
and that was happening.
I guarantee you it was.
Happening quite a bit. Now, she described the parties attended by businessmen, law enforcement officers, and politicians. We're talking about cops. Yeah, law enforcement officers and politicians. And apparently that's where children were being abused and silenced. You would have literally the police that everyone's told as a kid, especially in that day and age, like you can trust the police, you can trust the cop, you can trust, they're here to like protect you. If there's ever an emergency, call 911. The police will come help you. Well, they grew up where the police were doing this shit today.
Well, yeah, where the police were the ones committing these atrocious acts.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine living in a space like that, right? You're an orphan, you're living in foster care, you get adopted by a family, and you're hoping for the best, and then these people start dragging you across the country and the world to do heinous things.
Yeah,
dude. Only for the gain of the adults in the scenario, right? This is only gaining more status, I guess you would say, for specifically Lawrence King Jr.
Yeah.
The monster.
Yeah, dude.
Absolute monster.
And he's just one of a litany of people that are involved in this horrible shit.
I'm excited to find out how these tie in with the Epstein.
Oh, we're getting there.
Well, we'll get there. I believe
we're
it.
Getting there, bro.
I'm also excited to get Allie Hopper in here to see her opinion too here in a little while.
Oh yeah. No, I'm very excited about that. That's why I'm trying to speed through this part. So now there is something that did happen. There was the financial what was it? Oh, I'm sorry. Let me finish off one note about Alicia Owen real quick. So I already, did the part, discussed the part where she described, like the parties attended by like cops and businessmen and like all that stuff. But unlike, basically Bonacci was the one, since he had some other details that were so finite that you could not refuse them. Hers got picked apart.
Really?
Yeah, it got picked apart, and it was in a way where, like, in some of the stuff I was seeing, and I was trying to get documents on it, but it was actually hard to get these documents pulled because they don't want anyone looking at this stuff. Like, it's not public. So I was hoping I could find something because I wanted to find an actual document from the actual court proceedings that basically discussed the point of there was evidence that was submitted that the judge would not allow. There was, on her behalf, like it was evidence to corroborate more her story, and it wasn't allowed. So that apparently happened in there, and I couldn't get my hands on the documents because they're sealed.
This makes me so unbelievably angry.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. No, it just keeps getting worse. It's just going to keep getting worse.
I know it is. I just got to iterate how heinous these things are. I know that most people have brought to light the Epstein and the Diddy's of our modern culture, but this has been going on for quite a while.
Yeah.
This is not the first case scenario with Epstein and Diddy. This is an ongoing thing that our government has been doing.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And but let's talk about something else. This isn't let's kick over into 1988 because we really talked a lot about the events that took place in 1986, 1987. A little bit after 1988 as well. There was other things going on, like the things with Paul and Alicia did take place. All those events that was mixed in.
Yep.
Obviously it's a timeline, but basically one financial inquiry basically became a criminal network probe.
Is this the one in Nebraska?
Yeah, that's what we're still talking about. Yeah, all of that. Sorry, I was like, wait a minute, did I say a state earlier? Like, did I forgot to say we're not talking about Colorado anymore? My bad. So, initially, Nebraska State Legislature. Yeah. Oh, thank you. I thought I clicked the button. Nebraska State Legislature launched the Franklin Committee, and that was to investigate financial crimes that the Franklin Credit Union, Senator Lauren Schmidt led against it. They're the ones who was actually leading this committee to investigate all of this financial craziness that was going on with the place. And basically it started as like kind of like a standard type embezzlement situation, and then rapidly transformed into something way more complex and way richer pockets. We're not talking about like a few $100,000. We're talking about millions.
Yeah, I believe
millions of dollars.
Well, yeah, he got caught for embezzling $40 million.
Yeah,
that's where all of this started falling apart on him. That they found the embezzlement of
Yep.
millions of dollars.
Yeah, and what was really messed up is that so did you what was the number that you said?
It was
40?
$38 to $40 million.
Oh, okay.
Is what they.
I wrote 40 million down in my
Yeah.
notes, and all that was missing. And they say like, so they were able to account for some of it, and so some of it was like jewelry, a private jet, and then like parties, like things like that, like all this frivolous spending. They were able to account for a whole bunch of it there, but they weren't able to get all of it, because what became even more suspicious was that none of the financial, like, what's the word for it? Regulators,
Okay,
essentially.
Yeah.
None of the financial regulators flagged it ever. And it was blatant it was happening. Like, it wasn't something you just didn't notice.
Sounds to me like they were in.
Everybody
cahoots.
was. That entire credit union was corrupt from the foundation to the top.
Yep.
Like, there was no good person working there. They were all dirty.
Don't trust your local
Yeah.
credit unions.
Don't. They took our jabs. Oh wait, they didn't take our jabs. They kind of took our jabs. We'll just say they took our jabs. That's better. So, where was I? So, basically, when they noticed that none of these like financial regulators had flagged any of it, that's pretty much where everything kind of like kicked off. Like the pancake got flipped. You know what I mean? And that's basically they were just like, oh, this is one giant con artist going on, like, a con company, the works, and let's figure out what's really going on. And then they were basically potentially unearthing a very, very protected network of child trafficking, money laundering, blackmail operations, political and law enforcement complicity, essentially, where they're in on it, all up there in Omaha, like, and basically every single piece of paper, like the entire paper trail, all went to Larry King, or Lawrence E. King Jr. It all went to him. And the committee at that point, they were like, we need to get a PI in here. We need to get someone who's not a part of any kind of police division or even surrounding areas police division. So they went and they got Gary Caradoni.
Oh, yes.
That's where he comes in. And he's the investigator who believed the children. He believed all of them. And basically, to get to the bottom of it, the committee hired Gary in. And he, just so you know who he was a former state trooper, and then he turned into a private investigator later on. And he was known for going where others wouldn't. Yeah. That's his resume. He would go where no one else would dare to go. He's like, nah, fuck it, I'll go there. They're doing something wrong. I'm gonna figure it out.
Attaboy.
Like I want all the smoke, dude. And he
we gotta free the kids.
Fortunately, he got all the smoke.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he he died under suspicious circumstances.
Yeah, and I mean, when you hear how he died, you're not gonna be like, I'm about to tell you how he died. Yeah. So we'll just save it for that. But so anyway, so let's keep going. So Caradori, or Gary, he started to build his case. So he found photographic evidence from parties. Some images even showed minors with high-profile figures, like Paul. That was another piece of thing that went in Paul's favor. There's a picture of him with these people, and it was stuff that Gary found. And so they he started collecting photographic evidence. He got all these witness testimonies, and they all matched up independently. So these witness testimonies that he was getting, none of the witnesses knew each other. And all of this information about, what was going on was still being kept under lock and key, because they realized they were all investigating before they got Gary. They had this dawning realization that, like, oh, crap, we need to be super quiet about this, because if anyone knows, if what we think is happening with all these high, powerful people, if they find out that we're investigating it and we're onto them, everything's going to get, pretty much things may disappear completely, and we're not going to be able to stop this. So they went out of their way to keep it under lock and key. And that was one of the biggest things about Gary's, all of his detective work, was that all of these witness testimonies, all these independent ones, all of them matched up, and none of these witnesses knew each other. We're talking about kids in foster care systems from like several states away were matching precisely the exact same everything as these kids over here. And so now he even went even farther. He tracked down flight logs. This guy was a badass. He went and did the work. I mean, I don't know what methods he used to get it. I'd imagine he probably broke into a couple of places. I would have too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you got to do what you got to do.
But so he tracked down flight logs that corroborated stories of all these victims being flown out of Nebraska. And that was the weird thing, because I came across things talking about how there were the children that were being trafficked. You're going to hear a lot of, oh, they got flown out of Nebraska. But what about the kids who are in different states? How are they getting flown out? They are getting bused or driven to Nebraska and then flown from there.
Oh, God.
They kept that was actually a smart move on the bad people's part. They didn't want everything coming from multiple places, because they were able to basically cover their tracks if they kept it all from one point.
Yeah, keep them off of flight records, keep them off of video and cameras.
Yep.
There was a video recording of Paul Bonacci testifying in court, and then I found a transcript of it, and I found like a document.
Did you throw that can you post it into the deal?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it talks about individuals that Paul Bonacci was with and the things that he was, I don't know how to say this without coming crass, used for.
Mm-hmm.
There was one instance here where he was with a gentleman, or a monster rather, named Citron, Peter Citron, and Paul was age 10, and this individual was age 12. When they went to a Peony Park, and they got abused wildly at a campsite where they would bust these children into and have them at a compound where there are several buildings, like a summer camp.
Yeah.
And they would bring in these officials there as well to use them as however they pleased.
Yeah. It's so messed up.
It's
well, and one more thing to add to all of this is that in Gary Caradori, I always want to say Cara, but we'll just say Caradori. He, other than tracking down the flight logs, and I said that, like, he learned of the alleged parties, where they took place. Well, this is where these parties actually took place, just so everyone hears it. Military bases, private mansions, corporate retreats. And then some are unknown, like full on. Because it was like other, like the same children who could map out someone's house, right? Or some location because they were trafficked there. But there were certain locations that basically they were bagged. Like they don't even know where they were. They just know that they got put to sleep, essentially. Like they all of a sudden felt sleepy because they were drugged. And then they woke up at wherever this place was, and they had no idea because it was not like any of the rest, So there's other places that things took place that we don't know where they actually took place. So I wanted to make sure to throw that in there. So
we have a comment here from an individual named Quan S. asking if we're going to talk about how Bush Sr. was linked to this story as well, and how the Catholic Church was also affiliated with this.
I'm getting there. That's in our next parts. Yep. And we're almost done with section 1.
And those of you who are just now joining us, we are live as well. We are live every Friday talking about this stuff. So whenever we start taking questions from the chat and bring in Ali Hopper here in just a moment, remember that we are live.
Yeah. So, where was I? I want to make sure I get the last little tidbit in here. Okay, so this is my last little part on this section. So, local news outlets and a few independent journalists began investigating, and then one Carolyn Stitt began asking questions at the Foster Care Review Board. she discovered over a dozen children with similar stories and connections to, Lawrence E. King Jr. And but the thing is that there was like a whole bunch of like, but like basically instead of having national headlines, the story was straight up. This is all the story was met with when it came to the media. Full censorship, would not let an iota out. Nothing but smear campaigns against anyone involved in it, and then whispers. Basically, like it was a phrasing, and it was called "whispers of quote unquote satanic panic."
Yes.
Which is a phrase that was widely used, or widely.
It was coined.
Yeah, it was coined back in the 1980s to dismiss basically legitimate child abuse claims. That's fucked up.
Yeah, it is.
So basically, when media interest started to tick upwards, powerful people stepped in basically to silence the whole.
Well, yeah,
thing.
because Lawrence King wasn't necessarily the kingpin of all of this.
Mhm.
He was simply the guy who was the fall guy. He was the middleman, the person who would traverse all these children around. He was simply just the middleman. There were higher politicians and higher officials who were the ones who were really facilitating this.
Yeah.
Like George Bush Sr.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a few others in there too.
Absolutely. You want to list those? Do you want to list those names real quick?
I will when we get to them.
Okay.
Because I'm doing it in chronological order, so it all makes sense. Because I don't want to drop names way too early and then it not become relevant until way later, and then it's like, oh, why did we name them earlier? I could have swore they said the name. But with that being said, just to close this first part out, by the close, basically wrapping up the year of 1988, King was under federal indictment for financial fraud, but none of these sex abuse claims that had been like prosecuted at all. So the sex abuse claims, nothing had happened. He was under federal indictment for financial fraud. Victims, like Bonacci and Owen, were basically being discredited or imprisoned, because still at this time, Bonacci was still getting, even though he had more corroboration to his stuff, they were still trying to discredit him.
And let's not forget that all of these things that were happening to Bonacci were the ages from 8 to like 14 years old.
Yeah.
He was a child. This is a young child. These awful things happening to them. With his story here in the document I posted in the X Space and in our X Live chat, there's recalls of him having to commit oral sex on older men, ages like 60 and plus.
It's fucking gross.
And this young kid was 10 years old.
That's
These people deserve to be locked away forever. Throw away the key.
Yeah.
Forget about it,
dude. Sorry.
It's awful. It really is.
But so sorry, I'm just kind of like recapping that thing off for 1988. So, Gary Caradori was gathering, the kind of evidence that could basically it was going to full-fledged basically be a national scandal. It would be all over the place. And then the Franklin committee knew it was starting down something like something elaborate, massive. Like this was not a small case. This was a basically like an Armageddon in a way of interpersonal branches of government to the system that everyone operated by. So they're just like, holy shit. And so, but before they could pull the trigger on like doing all the public hearings, basically if something would happen that would throw everything off the rails. And and we'll cover that in the next part. Yeah. So I'm going to leave it at that, but just to give you guys the connection, dominoes of in order of events. So you've got Nebraska Foster Care Review Board starts noticing unusual patterns. That's 1986. And then you got social worker Julie Walters. She compiles and escalates all these reports, which then basically for her, it turned into a situation where she was like, "Oh, this is going to turn into a way deeper investigation because of what I found." Said everything got ignored and suppressed. Now jump to 1987. Victims Paul Bonacci and Alicia Owen step forward, with all of their claims on everything. And then jump to 1988. You got Nebraska legislature forms the Franklin Committee, and it was all just to initially investigate financial fraud at the credit union, which was led by Senator Lauren Schmidt. And then during that, the audits revealed 40 million missing. And then that's where things started to funnel more towards what's really going on here, because everyone in this place is corrupt, because they would have known, because it was that blatant. And then jump forward, and then the next domino, that domino falling goes right into whistleblower testimonies that link all the missing money to all this child trafficking, like paying for the jets, paying for these fancy resorts, like all this crap for them to have these horrible sex parties with underage kids. And then from there, you've got state hires the private investigator, Gary Caradori. He does all of his investigative work, interviews, flight logs, photos, house layouts. And he, compiles all that real evidence. And then all of a sudden, Alicia Owen is charged with perjury.
Yep.
And that's where that hits. And then you've got reporters start to actually sniff around in the later half of 1988. And then you've got the Franklin Committee basically realizes that this isn't just something bigger than state fraud. Like it is, they didn't have a label for it because they're just like, we don't know what to do. This is beyond massive. Like, we need help. Like, there's no way. How are we supposed to stop this? So that's the dominoes effect. So if anyone's got any questions now, I know that that's it for this section before we
absolutely
go on, because we're about to really get into some messed up stuff and it gets all weird spiderweb more. So I don't know if Basic, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Sorry. The first part is a lot to get through. It's a lot of just like weird time frames, and because a lot of things are happening all at once in this thing. So, but yeah. Now that we're here and we've kind of done that, is there anyone have any questions, or if anyone want to give input, or if you do?
We can also bring Allie in here.
Or you can bring Allie in, whichever order.
Yeah. I mean, you guys described it really well. I mean, I'm starting to dive down this rabbit hole. I mean, the only thing I can say about it right now is it's a prime example of, systemic corruption, how it impacts, people trying to seek justice. It shows the perverse connections between, political figures, those with money versus those who don't, and how it just completely affects those who are constantly victimized. And it's almost as if, like, you don't have enough money to throw at them to fight them, so they just silence you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still going on every single day, right? Allie,
Yeah.
I see you here. You can feel free to unmute yourself and introduce yourself to everybody if you'd like.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Basic and Cody, for bringing me in. It's very interesting stuff. I actually, as someone that works in this industry, I hate to say it, but I hadn't heard of the Franklin scandal. But looking into it, I'm glad that you guys are really diving deep into it. It's not surprising what ended up transpiring, and it goes to show that it's not just a today problem. It's not just morality of individuals today, but it shows the systemic problem that we've had for generations. And what people need to understand in the trafficking world is that really, when you're expecting the system to investigate itself, it's not going to. It's going to protect itself, it's going to insulate itself. And so when you have elected officials, members in positions of power and authority, they aren't going to do the due diligence necessary to investigate truly. And how you see that is the way that they sentenced Alicia. I mean, I have never heard of someone that was sentenced 9 to 15 years, and that is one of the harshest perjury sentences ever given to a minor that I've ever heard of. Um, so when you treat a survivor not as a survivor, but as a threat, that also shows that you're trying to protect more than what meets the eye. And I really think that it would do some justice for this administration, or, if we are able to maintain the House, Senate, and presidency in the next election, um, whether it be Vance or whoever else, I would love for them to reopen this, reinvestigate it, not just because of Alicia, but it speaks volumes to those that have suffered at the hands of people that have taken the justice system for, for granted, and taken it um basically as a tool to use and wield against the victims that they harm.
That is very well said. It is a ongoing problem, as we've outlined here a few times as well, and the two of you have mentioned it as well. The system is meant for individuals who are lesser than, quote unquote, the elite, to be taken advantage of. Uh, I sure hope that there can be some sort of resolute to all of this in the coming future, in the coming days, not necessarily specifically for the Franklin scandal, but for all sex trafficking and child trafficking in the future.
Yeah.
Because it is a.
Hey,
Go ahead.
sorry, I do have one more point to make. So our justice system, sorry, that's my parrot. My Our justice system has not figured out a way to insulate itself from this kind of corruption. And so a lot of people want to, get the justice necessary for the Epstein case, but if it hasn't done the due diligence needed to fix the corrupt infiltration of the justice system in general, then we're going to see a repeat of the Franklin scandal with the Epstein situation, because it involves that same scale of upper level officials, highest levels of government in multiple countries, and just time and time again of industries and agencies overlooking people seeking help. And we haven't figured out a way for the justice system to actually work the way it needs to. And so I don't want to see another Franklin scandal when it comes to Epstein.
Yes, I am right there with you. As somebody in your position, do you have any sort of insight into how they could potentially fix this or come to a conclusion?
Um, with Epstein or just in general?
Well, I suppose just in general, right? The context of it is there is a huge underlying problem with all of these children being taken advantage of and going missing. Uh, do you potentially have any way to potentially quell that? Maybe have them on some sort of dossier if they're an orphaned or foster child or anything of that nature.
Really, what I would do is you need to hit the trafficker, those that are facilitating this process, but you need to hit the buyers, because the buyers are what's fueling this economy. When you have the United States as the highest buyer of sex trafficking and child trafficking in the world, that shows that we have a problem here within society where United States is buying this air quote commodity, and we have such low penalties for the purchase of prostitution, the purchase of sex, low sentencing and actually prosecutions of these crimes. And so when you start to hit home on some of these cases, you need to go after the buyers. You need to go after every single person along the way that looked the other way. And that includes, like this example of the Franklin scandal, the bank. If people are using this bank to insulate the money that they're making from this industry, and the bank is not asking additional questions as to having like micro deposits put in or enough money put in where it doesn't flag, they need to be held accountable as well. So every single individual, every single agency, every single corporation that this type of um nefarious activity touches, everyone needs to go down for it. And then only then are you going to start to make an impact in the trafficking industry.
That's very well said, Ali. Have you had any insight, or have you been able to file charges against any of these individuals in your line of career to save some of these children?
So I did testify in front of Congress in November of 2024 on the unaccompanied children program. We went down and did research on the border in Central America, South America. We've interviewed incarcerated traffickers. And so what we're doing is we're doing on the ground, in person, upfront research that can't be, refuted because it's done by us. We give it to the proper authorities, and we are working cases and making sure that we're a conduit for change. We don't conduct rescues yet, but um that's not to say that we wouldn't if we encountered a situation, but we aren't the type that are going to kick down doors. We're going to know and have trusted law enforcement partners that we're going to reach out to that know the law, because we want prosecutions. We don't want to just rescue kids. We want these bad actors behind bars, and if you don't do it right, these bad actors are going to get off scot-free, and they're going to keep offending and reoffending. But what we typically do is, like I said, that research, we educate the community. And so that's what we've been doing.
Is there any good place for people to go who are curious about how to educate themselves on this better and are able to maybe donate or help out in any fashion?
Absolutely. Guardagainsttrafficking.org is our website. It's our nonprofit. And what I would say is a good way to start spreading the word in your community is not only by going to the website, getting some information, but we do advocate for anti-grooming bills across every single state in the United States. Everyone thinks that they have a grooming bill in their state that protects children from adults sexually grooming them. And that's where this starts, really. If you talk about the Franklin scandal, you mentioned grooming. These aren't white vans that conduct snatch and grabs of children. It's a grooming process, whether it's through the foster care system, whether it's through online. But if you can start at the grooming level, you can cut the head off the snake before it bites somebody.
Hell yeah, hell yeah. What's that website again that you said guard against?
Guardagainsttrafficking.org.
Perfect. Yeah, we're gonna link that and all of our socials for this episode and whatnot. So maybe we can get some more people out there to help facilitate. Uh, wow. I praise you for the line of work that you do. That is a serious, serious thing, and I couldn't imagine the heartache and the turmoil that you and your family have gone through to have to fight for these children and fight for taking out these awful, awful bad actors. So praised on you. Good for you. Keep doing the hard work.
Yeah, for real.
If there's anything else you want
Well,
to add, Allie, please
I
feel
just want to
free.
thank you guys for, taking up the torch to talk about these tough stories. It takes a true, courageous and brave person to talk about these things. And so I just commend you guys for doing the due diligence, the research into cases like this, because, like I said, I wasn't previously aware of the Franklin scandal. So what you guys are doing is you're making people aware of things that have gone on in our nation and our world's history that has, been long forgotten. And so I just want to thank you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we try to do over here. We try to bring a little bit of insight to our history because we are flooded with modern, inundated news and technology and the stories we see today. But we have to remember the past and how we got to where we are in such a messed up society.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So with that being said, is there did anyone have any other than
Basically, was there
yeah,
anybody
Tony?
else out there who wanted to say anything?
I haven't seen any requests yet. So, guys,
Okay,
if you say anything or add anything to it, please feel free to request.
perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, because we're about to get into basically this is everything that takes place between 1989 to 1990. So this particular section, this is all it's going to cover, which I titled in
It's
my
2
notes.
years,
What was that?
1988 to 1990.
No, 89 and 90.
That's 1 year.
Yeah, yeah. All this is in 1 year.
Holy cow.
So in my notes, I wrote the silencing because it's all about evidence, death, and the collapse, pretty much eradication of truth. That's essentially all that happens in this whole section. So, like I said, it starts getting more effed up as things go on, So, with that being said, I think we're good to go. So, all right. So by 1989, the Franklin scandal pretty much had crossed this threshold. So the pattern of abuse had obviously been identified. The whistleblowers had been heard. The money trail was being extensively followed. And most importantly, Gary Caradori had begun collecting all this irrefutable evidence. But the deeper that Gary ended up digging, the more basically the system pushed back on him and anyone connected to this situation. And in the middle of it all, pretty much there is a sudden, basically unexplained death, and it just tore everything to pieces within, the pure momentum of the investigation that basically sent this like essentially a message that resonated on every layer of power, you could say, which is if you get too close, you will be erased. That's essentially what happens. So let's talk about Gary Caradori's breakthrough. So this is in early 1989. Caradori he was more, it's kind of like the Dark Knight quote, from the movie where it's like, what is the quote? Like, he's not the hero we deserve, but the one we need, or he's not the one we need, it's the one we deserve, or something like that.
Something along those lines.
Essentially, that's what Gary was.
He's Batman.
Yeah, essentially in this situation. And he did not work by hearsay. I'm going to state that right now. Gary was very adamant about actual factual based evidence. He was not looking for hearsay or circumstantial. No, he wanted, his big thing was, if I'm going to do my job and I'm going to make sure, if, especially with what this is about, like especially child sex trafficking, all these things, because he was very adamant about protecting and saving these kids. He was like, I'm going to make sure all my ducks are 100% in a row. It's irrefutable. That's what he was shooting for, which is what he did, apparently. So, like I said, he tracked flight logs, all this stuff, showing all these victim accounts of being flown across multiple state lines just for all the sex trafficking stuff. Now, he also uncovered hotel and travel receipts. Like, he got his hands on like actual physical receipts of people being in places that aligned with all the party dates victims had described.
Okay.
It lined up exactly with those dates.
It's evidence. It's proof.
Physical receipts showing, I went and bought a whole bunch of booze at this liquor store that's right next to this hotel that I paid for as well with the same card. And there's videotapes of me in there. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he had it all. He also interviewed former employees and staffers from places where basically abuse was allegedly to have like happened and took place. And there was a few of them. Now, this one I did not see there's a couple that had names, but it was segued into another part. So it was hard to tell if it was talking about this particular part. So basically, former employees and staffers, he interviewed them, proved where things were taking place. And then he said apparently some of them confirmed there was all this weird behavior that would happen when obviously someone who was very wealthy would come in. And it would be like really strange guests. Like people would be coming in that would never stay at this particular hotel or whatever, because they're known for, they're somewhat well known in the area at that time. And it's like, why would they stay at that hotel? That doesn't make any sense. They would never stay at that hotel.
They're multimillionaires. Why would they be there?
And the staff was like, it was just really weird because you could tell they were out of place. Like, they're not supposed to be here in a way, normal, upon normal circumstances. So, and then of course, I know I mentioned the photographs. So he located photographs which showed a bunch of underage boys with elite figures. And one of the things I found, now granted, all of his evidence disappeared when he died. It was gone. Someone went through his stuff and took everything. And we all know why. It's because he actually had receipts.
Yeah, he was on track.
He was on point. And supposedly, one of the photographs that he managed to get was of an underage boy with some powerful politician. And it was a sexual photo. It wasn't just like them being in the same photo. It was actually of a very inappropriate sexual exchange that was happening. So like he had real evidence that was irrefutable. But by it was basically the mid 1989. So just think 6 months into the year, essentially, Caradori told his colleagues that he had found proof and that he would validate everything the kids had been saying and destroy the denials that basically shielded all these powerful people.
Oh God! And then that word probably got out,
Yeah.
and that's what ultimately got to
Yeah.
his demise.
Yeah, and in fact, I have a quote for him that I put here. He said, "quote We're on to something big. Some of the stuff is extremely delicate, and we're not supposed to have it. We've got to protect it."
Mm.
And that was just a random quote of apparently something he said. So let's jump to July of 1990. So Gary Caradori received a tip, and basically the sources claimed to have original photographs and documents tied to King's alleged trafficking. So tied directly to King, like
Oh,
apparently
shit.
like, oh wait, I'm about to get photographic evidence of Lawrence E. King Jr., you know, the guy who's like this weird mastermind behind this, or seems to be the mastermind behind this trafficking and all that stuff. I'm now going to have photographic evidence and other receipts that prove he was doing it too, not just going in there with certain evidence that showed that he was the mastermind. It was going to get him on every level, even doing acts like illicit acts, you know, of sexual orientation, essentially.
Ugh.
Yeah, horrible, man. I want to make jokes. I've been in a goofy mood all day, just so everyone knows. But now that we're doing the episode, I'm just like, I can't really make.
We
a joke
typically
right
make
now.
jokes about things, but it's really difficult to make this lighthearted.
It is. Yeah.
I mean, we're
Yeah.
both fathers too, right? So
Yep.
it's a little close to home.
Oh yeah. I can tell you right now. If anyone ever did something like that to my kids, like the movie Taken is a bunch of Hollywood nonsense. I would make sure their entire bloodline's erased.
Oh yeah,
Tell you what,
yeah.
it'd be like, oh, you have a family too. Well, guess what? Their fruit of your loins means they probably got some weird thing in them too. Probably be best if we took them out, you know, guys. See, that was my joke for the night, everybody. That's so hilarious. So, anyways, moving on before I get in trouble. So, yeah, it was a big deal, you know, because they were going to get receipts on specifically Lawrence E. King. And he called his wife after this meeting, Gary Caradori did. And he said, I got what we need. We're going to get them now. This is it. They have no escape.
Good.
Because he met this person and got them. That was the last time anyone heard from him. That was the last time Gary was alive. So jump a little bit forward to July 11th, 1990. So that first part I just talked about, the trip to Chicago, that was just beginning of July. That was like in the first week, or first week and a half. He died flying home from the meeting on July 11th, 1990.
That's right.
So, and his son was with him.
His plane crashed.
Yeah. Gary and his son boarded a single-engine Piper airplane piloted by Caradori himself, en route to Nebraska, somewhere over Lee County, Illinois. So the plane exploded in midair.
What?
Yeah. I told you it was, yeah, he was murdered, dude.
I knew that his plane exploded. I didn't know it exploded in midair. I thought
Yeah.
it crashed.
So he had so get this. So there were certain accounts I came across, like where it's like, so you have there's a bunch of witnesses to seeing the plane explode. And they tried to say a few different times, they tried to say that the engine exploded. But according to some of the witnesses who were a little bit closer to the plane when it exploded, the explosion didn't come from the front of the plane. It came from where they would be, like inside the cab.
Like where luggage would go.
Yeah, like it blew up inside the main body, not the nose of the plane where it was a single engine.
Hmm.
So it's like,
Sounds like a bomb to
and the
me.
fuel's not in there. Where the fuel tank was on it was not where that thing exploded, the origination of the explosion. So it's like, it's pretty blatant he was murdered.
Yeah.
Like there's no getting around that.
I mean, if you're going around blatantly saying in public, potentially, I'm not sure if it was in public or to any sort of media, saying, hey, we finally got them. They're going to go down.
Yeah.
These individuals who we keep talking about, who are very high level, and I've hinted at it being George Bush Sr., these individuals don't want that information being out, and they'll do anything they possibly can.
Yeah. George Bush comes up in a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just so you know.
Yeah,
Sorry, you dropped the
absolutely.
name again. He's coming up here shortly.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off if there was anything else you were trying to add. Good? Okay, cool. I'm going to keep going. So the plane exploded midair and crashed into a cornfield. Both Gary and his son AJ were killed instantly, is what everyone assumes. Which they're assuming rightfully so, because what was left of the plane, because of where it blew up, there was no surviving that cab
Oh,
explosion.
there's no way, especially in the altitude.
No. And yeah. I mean, I know you hear stories about people falling out of planes or or they go, jumping,
Yeah.
and they have a faulty chute, and they're like, there's been cases of people falling 300 feet or some shit and hitting the ground and walking away with barely a bruise, but I don't know what's up with that. But apparently, this case that didn't happen here. They were dead. That just making that clear. So, like I said, a lot of witnesses on the ground. There was a lot of witnesses to seeing that plane blow up, and reported seeing like a big bright flash before the plane just was a fireball falling to the ground.
And his son was in there. God.
Yeah. Investigators said the wreckage was scattered across it didn't give me the exact like circumference, but it was scattered across a massive area. And we're talking about we're not talking about a football field, people. We're talking like all the debris. It was scattered
Miles.
over a few mile radius. And they were like, well, since we can't, find, like, basically they're like, since we can't find enough of the plane, because there was like nothing, they found little bits
That's a
and
bullshit excuse.
Yeah,
though.
they just called it as engine failure. But a lot of there was other private investigators who investigated it, and they said this type of plane, this particular Piper, single engine Piper that he was flying, even if the engine blew up, it wouldn't explode it into millions of pieces in midair. It would just, the engine would blow up. It would probably peel out the openings of the metal shroud around the nose of the plane, and then the plane would still be one big hole coming down to the
It
ground.
would still have wings.
Yeah, well, the explosion, it blew up the cab, and the entire cab, like, not only was the plane blown into a bunch of pieces, but the main body of the cab was still partially intact, but nothing else was. Ish. It was like the back half of it. That was just pure fire. So it's like, well, how is that on fire? Where's the engine? Like, nothing made sense in what they saw, going along with the narrative of engine failure. It didn't line up. And so now a farmer found a briefcase debris. Yeah, like, so he found debris in his field. They went to a briefcase, and it was from the plane. And that was Homeboy's briefcase, but it was in tiny little pieces now. So, but the thing is, there's question though, because some people say that briefcase was not his, and they think that someone had smuggled a briefcase on that had a bomb.
Planted it.
Yeah, planted it on the plane that had a bomb inside.
Well, again, if these high-level officials and, well, potentially the CIA as well were affiliated with it, they will, yet again, like I said momentarily ago, will do anything they possibly can.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't put it past them to put a bunch of C4 in a briefcase and just detonate it.
No, hell, even the type of explosion it was, I mean, if you were to, you could do a lot of damage with tannerite.
Yeah.
I mean, I've played with tannerite, blowing stuff up out in the field, just shooting it, Imagine if and that was just a tiny little bit. Imagine if you compacted a briefcase with a little bit of plaxi in there.
With high altitude as well.
Oh, yeah.
That would, oxygen levels would, God, I couldn't imagine.
Yeah, you could layer that up. There's so many different ways they could have created whatever bomb in some case.
Mm-hmm.
Let me switch it back. So the farmer that found the briefcase, but what was inside, no one knows what was, because there was another briefcase found. So there was the debris of a briefcase found. And then there was apparently a partially intact briefcase that was still closed, but it was like the corner and like stuff. Or I pictured like the corner, or maybe the upper half of it had been peeled, like damaged significantly, things like that. But apparently what was inside, because there apparently stuff was inside of it, it just vanished overnight. Whenever, because it got reported in, and then when they showed up to collect the case, it was gone. It wasn't even there anymore.
That's
like the contents were removed, and they're like, we know for a fact there was stuff in it. Where's the stuff? And they're like, we don't know what you're talking about. And all the paperwork had now changed from this recovery of this briefcase to show that there was nothing ever in it. But yet it was stated multiple times before that there was stuff, there were like documents and things like that inside this case when they found it from the wreckage. Then all of a sudden now it's gone.
Well, of course.
So How convenient. So with that being said, let's keep moving forward. So the National Transportation Safety Board so get this. So a whole bunch of random aviation investigators labeled as engine failure. But then the National Transportation Safety Board ruled it as pilot error.
No fucking way.
They ruled it as
dude.
pilot error, but never explained the reports of an explosion or the missing briefcase. They didn't touch any of the stuff we just talked about.
Well, we
They
know
wouldn't
that
even talk about
we
it.
know that law enforcement's a part of this whole scandal too, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
The law enforcement agencies, wherever they happen to blow up, you said it was over Nebraska.
Yeah, it was en route to Nebraska, and it was somewhere over Lee County, Illinois.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, because they had an inner circle of network. Of
Yeah,
people.
absolutely. So it sounds like the law enforcement agencies, potentially, like I keep mentioning, the CIA, maybe the FBI, maybe the BRI, they were all affiliated with it. So they probably heard, well, they definitely knew it was going to blow up.
Yeah.
So they were ready to cover up their tracks.
Yeah, pretty much, man. Like but it pissed me off when I was doing my research on this. And this is my last little side note before I just keep going into the rest of this heavy stuff. So when I was researching the plane crash incident, you don't have to do 5 minutes of research into it to go, well, he was murdered.
Yes, I agree.
It's so blatant. And then for me, it just gets under my skin because it just shows that there's evil, horrible, corrupt people covering up for other evil, horrible, corrupt people.
Well, of course, that's the
you know.
blackmail.
And so it's just like, the especially knowing that, like, essentially Batman of the situation, of this narrative, was blown up in a plane. It's like, dude, Batman doesn't blow up in planes, you know? But it's real life. And so it was just infuriating going through it because it just, I could feel my blood pumping up every time.
And a lot of the documents that I found about the plane crash was all being said like suspicious malfunctioning, and he died under false pretenses and things like that.
There's a different
Just
story everywhere
blaming
you look.
him many different times, and trying their best to cover up some sort of a murder attempt.
Yeah.
Oh, not even an attempt, a murder.
Yeah, just straight up. And so now let's talk about the fallout a little bit after this. So after this took place, all right. So here are the immediate things that happened. The Franklin Committee was brought to its knees, essentially. Not just because all of this stuff went missing. That was literally all the nails in the coffin and the coffin itself and the excavator that dug the hole to put them in there, all of it, and the cement trunk to back up and dump the cement on top of them. Are you done with my analogies?
No, you're fine.
Cool. I got like 100 more, dude.
My computer has died.
I'll stack like 100 more on top of this stuff. But no, so not just because of that, but also because they the people of the Franklin Committee also grew a relationship with Gary. Like, they were friends with this guy. Like, it wasn't just like, so they were hurting for the children they're not able to help. Now they just lost all this evidence, but then too, they just lost a good person and someone who's trying to do right by everyone except for the bad people. Fuck those guys.
Yeah, fuck them.
Well, we're non-discriminatory. It could have been, there's probably women involved too, because we already know there's the stuff about Hillary Clinton and the allegedly stuff that's floating around over the years on areas of the dark web. So, equal rights equals fights. Yeah. Anyways, that's my joke for right now. Anyways, moving on from it. So the legislative investigation completely lost all of its momentum, with senators afraid to keep digging. Everyone got scared shitless.
Well, yeah.
And one committee member said this privately, and this is a direct quote from one of the committee members. That was the warning. Everyone got the message. Because they were talking about how everyone started running away from the situation that the committee had been working with. Like all these high-ranking senators, other politicians who had sway in the courts, all ran with their tails between their legs. So basically, public was told this was some tragic accident. Victims were told their stories no longer had proof. And King, meanwhile, was essentially, he was only being investigated now for financial crimes.
Oh, come on.
Yeah. So let's jump forward to the grand jury, late 1990.
Yep.
So rather than essentially pursue abuse claims further, uh, basically the state convened and a Douglas County grand jury not to investigate King or the adults named by victims, but to determine whether there was any crime conspiracy involving child abuse at all. They're like, is there really anything more? And they made the victims.
The audacity.
Like I said, I put it lightly when I said that they were trying to discredit these kids. And I only named Paul and Alicia. There were
there are hundreds,
there
probably
was there's
thousands.
tons of others who came forward all at that same time. It's just those two were like, Paul was a recruiting kid. He would have to go, like, he was like the closest to being inside Lawrence E. King Jr.'s inner circle
Yes.
compared to others. And so was Alicia. Alicia was a bit farther in, kind of like Paul, but yeah. And it just, yeah, let that sink in, everyone. It's all fucked up. So let's keep going though. So they concluded, and here's a quote: "The child abuse allegations are a carefully crafted hoax, a political and media firestorm just for media attention." Like pretty much saying, we all know that these kids were making up. We all know these investigators, that we all know Gary, he just died in a Plaza plane crash. He wasn't, he did, ignore all the messages that they're trying to put forth right now, showing that he had all the receipts, all the evidence. Like, and also child abuse allegations. That's a hoax. We all know people just make things up to get their 10 seconds of spotlight.
That sort of narrative is still going on today.
It's the same one they always use, man.
It's the narrative doesn't change.
Yeah, it never changed. Their tactics may change, but the narrative never does.
Oh, God.
It's like the whole what's the phrase on it where it's like, games are still the same. You have to use some type of controller to play the game, do whatever, but what you do in the game's a little bit different. But the narrative is always the same. The layout is always the same. So here, let me read through the rest of this. The victims. So let's talk about the main two who are at the forefront of this case. So Paul Bonacci and Alicia Owen. They were dismissed as just liars. They were tarnished. Their names were like tarnished.
Unreal.
Yeah. Alicia Owen got convicted of perjury and sentenced to 15 years in prison. And yeah, and Allie had mentioned that, or she was talking about like the 9 to 15 or whatever. Yep. 15 years in prison. No charges were ever brought against Larry King or any of the men named in the child abuse allegations. Instead of justice, everyone, the system basically flipped the script and prosecuted the whistleblowers.
Yeah. For perjury and defamation, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then one of the other things was that I know I did not bring up Paul's name as because I mentioned Alicia got convicted of perjury. I can tell you exactly why Paul did not get put in prison. It's because his testimony and the fact that he could tell everyone the layout of these high, powerful people's homes, that there's no way he would have been there.
There's
unless
no reason for him to be there.
He had actually been in the house. He even, in some of his stuff, so I found a couple of notes that were written down from some of the investigative team that was handling his testimony. And one of the deals, with him is that he was giving such detail that he literally could tell them how they had their pantry organized in one of the homes.
No way.
No joke. He literally gave that much detail, and it was exactly there was nothing out of place. It was flawless.
This kid's this man's memory now.
I feel
is
horrible.
Unbelievable that somebody under such intense trauma is able to relay such information.
Yeah, it's. Dude, I can tell you right now, anyone who sex traffics children or is a chomo or a pedo, I don't know why.
There's a bullet for you.
Yeah, dude, I have a solution to all of them. Why waste? I think it's dumb to keep vile things. If a dog bites someone, they put down the dog.
Yeah, 60 cents with your name on it, right?
Yeah, but when it comes to people, they don't really do that. And it's just some of these people are actual monsters. I wouldn't even call them just a bad person. They're just a monster. They're not part of any form of functional society.
I
They
also
should just be put down.
I also think that they should be
Very
put,
simple.
I also think that they should be put on blast and be punished for the crimes they have committed. Though
Oh yeah.
they should be tarred and feathered through the streets.
I think you should publicize the whole thing, and you know how they back in the day they used to do the guillotine,
Yes,
and they would chop people's heads off instead of their upper head. They just make a mini guillotine for their dick and balls,
well,
and do that publicly, and then they cauterize the wound, no anesthesia, and then everyone can make fun of them, tar and feather them, whatever, and then you just walk over and put a bullet in the back of their head.
well,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah, like ridicule them first, then put them down. What? We spent $200 total for this? You know how much it would cost to make a little bitty
And those
chopper for a little dang-a-lang? Come on, bro. Come on.
And honestly, I don't want my tax paying money going to feed these monsters in prison.
Oh yeah, no shit.
Uh,
That was my other reason. You know,
so
I just didn't say
there's
it.
that as well.
Yeah. But to move on, let's talk about let's get into Larry King's trial, or Lawrence E. King Jr.'s trial.
Yeah, not Larry
But
King.
only for fraud. Only for fraud, everybody. Nothing else. So in 1991, Larry King was finally tried and sentenced, not for sex trafficking, like I said, but for the embezzling of like 38 to 40 million dollars. I think they got him for 38, not the 40. But I think that's what they ended up getting him for. Because I wrote 38 million because that is what comes up in the court documents for that. Because that's public, of course, because it has nothing to do with sex trafficking kids. And this was all he embezzled from and laundered from Franklin Credit Union. So he received 15 years in federal prison, serving only about 10. I know you mentioned earlier he's
Yes.
alive and out kicking
Yes.
it about. But no, he got nothing. He has nothing on his record, nothing for criminal charges of any form for abuse allegations, despite get this, over 80 victims identified during the investigation. 80 of them
Whoa, wait a
gave
minute.
specific testimony about King himself.
So you're telling
So
me,
just keep that in mind.
holy shit, there was 80 people to say, yeah, Larry King, Lawrence King, this individual is the reason why I was at these facilities,
Yep.
and the reason why these horrible things happened to me. And the jury and the court officials said, well, he embezzled $40 million. We'll get him for that.
It's probably because he was giving them money.
Oh, they were all probably tied in with it.
Yeah, because you have to think something. There are some racketeering, there are certain money laundering schemes that, let's say they money laundered 40 million. Well, they really actually have more than 40 million. It depends on what little infrastructure they're doing it through, because they end up walking out with more money, basically as a dividend off of these other
Yep.
businesses that he funneled it through. So you could turn, depending on how you set up your scheme for laundering it, you could turn 40 million into 60 million. Or 40 million to 80 million. It just depends,
100,
right?
yeah, right.
Yeah, and typically you don't hear about in typical money laundering, like usually you walk away with what you're doing, right? But there are ways you can set it up to where there's more. And I'm sure if he was just doing it for that, and that's just what they found. Because remember, they killed, all the investigation got killed. Whenever Gary passed away and everyone ran with their tail between their legs, they half-assed investigating him for the financial stuff.
Hmm.
They only basically used what they had already gathered, and they didn't do any more when there was a ton of shit to still dig into. So who knows? I guarantee the money that they weren't coming after him for, I would bet money he just paid off people
Oh, guaranteed.
and paid the whoever in the system, court, judges, lawyers, blah, 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 all of them. So no charges were ever brought against him for anything worth actually being prosecuted for. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, the fraud part for sure. Right. But it's no secret that anyone who was not a part of the case, but heard about the case from beginning to end ish back in the day, everyone basically said, hey, we believe that this was intentional, and he was silenced with a padded jail sentence, so they could avoid putting him on full trial in front of like a full network of
Correct.
people and expose everything. And that's what the common person, when they heard about it, that's what they thought of. So that's what people were saying, because there's even at one point came across a deal, like an old, I want to say, it wasn't actually like a newspaper clipping. It was just a reference to
Like
one.
an article, right?
Yeah, it was just an article about it from back then. Pretty much there was like, how people back, I think they still maybe do it now for census, how they go door to door But back in the 90s, they really went door to door because that's how things worked back then. And when they were going door to door on people, it wasn't for census. There's people trying to get a petition signed about Larry King,
Lawrence.
like to go after him, or Lawrence. Sorry, I'm sorry, Larry King and your talk show. But no, Lawrence E. King Jr. There's people actually. There's small groups of people trying to get as much signatures on a petition for going after him for child abuse. There's no telling what happened to those. I don't know what happened to them because all of a sudden, all I can find on these petitions is the petitions were dismissed. That's it. So I don't even know.
Sounds about right.
I don't even know what the grand total ended up being.
Sounds like a huge
So-
corrupt system, and any court official or lawyer out there who fights the good fight, like Allie over here,
Mhm.
big kudos. That has got to be even harder when everybody is corrupt and you have to hold the moral ground.
Yeah.
To combat these awful
Yeah.
actors.
Yeah. And just to end out this part, basically by the end of 1990, this giant cover-up machine was in full pumping order. And you had the evidence of Gary Caradori that recovered was gone. You've got witnesses, that were discredited, jailed, or they dead. There were some people who just randomly died. Yeah, but I couldn't find anything else on it, so I did not mention it earlier because I could not find any real information. We're talking about foster children just dying. And then you've got Franklin Committee, it was dismantled. No further legislative efforts were made to investigate. Federal agencies like the FBI were accused of actively suppressing evidence
Knew it.
because they were directly involved in it.
Yep.
And then media outlets completely dropped the story. They didn't want anything to do with it. And then nothing but smear campaigns were going on the media against everyone involved, essentially. So yeah, take that to the bank. Whistleblowers who tried to speak out were harassed, blacklisted, and or threatened. Both.
Were there any officials named
Um,
that you were able to find?
No, because everything's sealed up tight.
Yeah.
There's a few, don't get me wrong, and there's few that just you can't hide those names, which we're going to be getting to here in just a little bit after we do a quick recap. But so basically, everything with this story goes from the investigation side to suppression, and then everything from, it then shifts from like a possible exposure to happen to a full, essentially like total contamination. And then, basically going from justice for victims to prosecution of truth tellers. So we'll go into the aftermath after we, do a touch base with everyone here in just a second. But just to give you guys like this domino chain of events for what we just covered starting in 1989, Gary Caradori was hired by the Franklin Committee, and then that knocked over the next domino, which is the Caradori interviews Paul Bonacci, Alicia Owen, and a litany of others. And then it goes right into Caradori finds flight records, travel receipts, and eyewitness confirmations, which then intertwines and connects over into where Gary starts to begin his recovery of photographs and documents. He travels to Chicago in July of 1990 to collect all this new evidence. Caradori calls home after the meeting, given that, that quote that I gave of him earlier is pretty much saying, hey, we're going to get them now for sure. And then all of a sudden on his plane trip home, his plane explodes midair over Lee County, Illinois, while it was en route to Nebraska. And that was July 11th, 1990. So it was literally like the next day after that phone call. It was either that morning or it was the next day. And then wreckage and the personal effects, including the briefcase, are collected by unknown parties before NTSB arrives. And that's where everything gets all messed up. And the photographic evidence documents, everything vanishes. Franklin Committee loses all of its momentum after Gary's death. Douglas County Grand Jury convenes to review abuse claims in late 1990 and then declares entire Franklin child abuse story a complete hoax and there's no credibility to it whatsoever. Alicia Owen is charged and convicted with perjury, sentenced to 15 years in prison. But I forgot to mention one detail. Sorry, I wrote it in my notes here. Paul Bonacci, even though he didn't get charged with perjury and put in prison, he got labeled as mentally unstable.
That sounds
Yeah, which is par for the course. That always happens. No charges were brought against Larry King or any of the sex crimes.
Lawrence King.
And then, well, I know I'm really bad about that because he comes up as Larry King when
know, all
people
the
write.
time.
So I keep saying Larry King. Lawrence E. King Jr. was not charged for any sex crimes or anything like that. And then, all the evidence gathered by Caradori, which is Gary, were never made public. No one has them. Well, someone's got them. And they probably destroyed them.
Oh yeah, they're gone, just like they did with all the other
Yep.
important documents.
FBI and federal agents were accused of interfering in the case, and then media pretty much said, "F all of you guys. We're not doing any of this. Let's run smear campaigns at 7:00 tonight. Please join in." That's essentially what happened. So that's the domino effect on all of that back to back in the order it happened. So yeah, with that being said, Basic, you have anything
I
you
see a
want?
requested
Oh.
hand there.
Oh, where is it? I think I saw.
Yeah, we have Anscar, and then we also have coming up Shepherd's Watch. They're both
Perfect.
right up the alley for this topic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, whoever was first.
Yeah, whoever was
let 'em in.
first.
All right, we have Anscar up here. How you doing today, Anscar?
Ansgar.
Can you hear us, Anscar?
I think he's
They show
marked
up
as
as
a.
listeners for me.
Yeah, me too.
He's showing up on my end as speaker. We'll try to figure that out, and then
Oh, I bet you
we'll
X
have.
is, the space is probably glitching.
Well,
out.
it looks like Shepard's a speaker now, so we can let them in. And Shepard, if you have any insight, feel free.
Well, I was just listening to everything y'all were speaking on. Thank you for allowing us to come in and speak. Thank you for the invitation, Basic. So, for Shepherd's Watch Foundation, we are a 501c3 out of Texas, and we assist all levels of law enforcement with the investigative intelligence side of the sex trafficking cases that we are given and we help with. I was just sitting here listening to what you were sharing. I never looked into the Franklin scandal, so I'm very interested in looking more. I'm sorry that we're late, but I did realize, as I'm listening, that one of the main things that I kept hearing y'all say, and our investigation team unfortunately sees this a lot, is when no one's given the real charges that they are guilty for. And then when they are charged, sometimes with the charges that they're really guilty for, which sometimes is child sex trafficking, they're not given the sentence they deserve. So it's definitely a problem that we have to, in every state, all of us, we the people, have to look at that and try to come up with legislation that will hold these traffickers more accountable. I know that Allie does that as well, where she is, and she's worked on federal. She might share that, but I tell you what, it's taking a lot of Allies, and there's not more than Allie. Besides her and Tara Rodas, there's really not many that are intentionally making sure their voices are being heard all the time, right? We've had a few people that have gone to Congress talking about the child sex trafficking, but not really as vigilant as Allie. And so we just want to thank her for what she's doing. We were actually blessed and honored to have her and Dr. Jared Sadolski, her partner with Guard Against Trafficking, come do a 2-day ride along with our investigative intelligence director. And for me, my name is Brandy. I do have a personal profile too. And I was able to go along with them. And it was amazing to be able to network with them and really, talk with them and have the honor of honestly being along with them in this fight, and Scar as well. So, and Relentless Mikey. So you've got a lot of people in here that definitely do the work. And I just want to say thank you. As a collective, we appreciate you bringing this to the forefront. There are not enough spaces that actually bring people on board that are doing the work and that you really do know are doing the work. There are a lot of organizations that say they're doing the work and they don't do what they say. So there's definitely some in here that are, and I just want to, as the Vice President of Shepherd's Watch, thank you. Thank you, Basic, and thank you very much, Smartly and Educated. You are definitely getting educated. And we would love to, I'm all be back and share more with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I,
But please reach out to us. We would love to have you on as a full guest or Allie as a full guest.
or both. I would love to
Yeah,
do both.
it would be phenomenal to hear the insight of the ride-alongs and the proceedings that you all go through, because that has to be a very daunting and scary task.
Yeah, and then on top of that, you know, I know we do like weekly podcasts and like we, do this every Friday. Well, thing is that I would be more than happy if not enough people are talking about this on the regular. I'd be more than happy to do something where it's like doing something for an hour once a month or an hour and a half or
Yeah.
something, and this be the priority focus of current things going on, and help push and shed light on that. And even if it's going to ruffle some feathers, I don't really care
Yeah, we
because
don't care about that.
I'd rather be in a situation where I've pissed some people off, because that just tells me I'm doing what's actually right. If I'm not making someone mad, that means I'm not doing something right. So, and on top of that, I've got kids of my own, and I'd rather them know that I was willing to speak up and actually try to get involved and do something that's going to stop that. Because, I'm lucky enough that this hasn't happened to my kids, and the future is unknowing. So
Yep.
it's like,
And
yeah,
Please go ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, we got Ansgar back, so what we got technical issues fixed.
Awesome.
Perfect. Ansgar, go ahead.
Hey, I want to thank you guys. Great space and phenomenal information. I love spaces where I could come in and get information on things. I have to say, this reminds me of, and I forget the name of the bank that was pointed out and that was caught up in some money laundering issues out of Canada. But
Mhm.
that's exactly what this reminds me of, and I think a lot of this plays in it. And we obviously know this goes way back, the trafficking and so on, for years. And just guys, so you guys know who I am and my credentials, if you will. I'm the co-founder of Project Milk Carton,
Oh,
Oh,
and
whoa.
a researcher here on, you know, with many organizations on an advocate for child trafficking and education and so forth. But phenomenal space on this information that you guys are laying out here. And I really do appreciate, um, somebody talking about this. What you guys were just speaking on too, Shepherd's Watch. We met in spaces, I think it was back in 2022, when nobody was talking about this information. And really, this Mikey, and we were going around, just anybody would get a mic and talk about it. So I really do appreciate you guys bring up this topic. Um, a- and this research and bringing it to light, because it's very important that people understand this has been going on for a long time. And I
Yeah.
would almost want to take this and see where it ties into Arkansas and the Clintons as governor and so on, because I guarantee you it probably ties in somewhere.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're about to get to Jeffrey Epstein. So that
Yeah,
because
yeah.
he connects into this as
I'm
well.
sure a lot of this connects in very well. And if the two of you, Shepherds or Angsar, want to put anything into the comments, we'll also post it onto our platforms, just like we did with Ali, so that people can get more insight and see where they can go donate and share and have this conversation more, because this is a very important thing to talk about.
Yeah, and Ansgar, one other
What
thing, I know I was saying it earlier, but I really mean it. I am more than happy to get involved in some form of way with being involved with these or any of these organizations.
Yeah, we're
that try
based
to-
out of Texas out here too. So
Yeah.
Shepard, if you need any help, holler at us.
Yeah, we'll help in any way we can.
I will say this, I heard you guys say earlier that you wanted to, how you can educate and so forth and support. And with Project Milk Carton, what we do is we have a website that does just that, not just educating parents, but it also educates kids, gives tools for parents and, to be able to educate your children as well. So, and I'll post that in the link, in the pill thing below, so you guys can link to that. But I mean, that's a very powerful thing. I always say be proactive, not reactive, and
Yes.
that's what we need to do, and that's what these spaces do. So, like, again, I can't say enough how important it is that you guys are holding space on this topic.
Yeah, and on top of that, since this is our weekly podcast, like this also gets distributed. This particular space, like all of this is being recorded because we're doing. We also have our live broadcast going at the same time on X. So if people wanted to watch and see the video, it's on there. but we distribute this out. Like this whole thing we're recording now will be put out next Thursday, or actually I think it's Wednesday afternoon. Sorry, next Wednesday afternoon across Spotify, Apple Podcasts,
You name
YouTube.
it.
Like it's
Rumble,
going to
you name it.
literally be everywhere that we have content. So, but with that
Wow,
being
I did
said,
not know that.
yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was saying I didn't know that. That's amazing. I mean, that's what we need. People with the platforms like that to start spreading this word, right? My other thing, it's been for a long time, is reach one, teach one. That's exactly what you're doing. You know, taking this information and spreading it out. And I applaud you for that. Amazing job, guys.
And we applaud everybody here who is fighting the good fight. We
Yeah.
are simply just trying our best to educate the world and our community onto the issues of the world. But you are fighting the fight, and we commend y'all for that. That's amazing.
Yeah. With that, oh, well, looks like we got hands up.
Shepard, go ahead.
I was just going to add, we're actually in your backyard. So we are out of the Dallas area. And we definitely are looking for people who want to get involved. So we will touch base on the backside because we're in each other's backyard.
That's
no,
amazing. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, we'll have to make sure to touch base with everybody after this episode for sure. But with that being said, it looked like Ansgard, did you have another thing you wanted to add?
Is your hand stuck?
Where's your hand stuck? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the hand's stuck. My apologies.
No, you're right.
Okay. So with that being said, I'm assuming we're good to go ahead and just dive through the rest.
Yeah, let's get it done, huh?
Yeah. So I know we had a little bit of a late start, and this is taking a little bit longer to go through it than I anticipated. But anyways, let's get going on this. So now we're getting on to some other weird stuff, because this is going to cover between the years of 1991 through 2003. And we're going to talk about the documentary that vanished, because there was a documentary that Discovery Channel was doing, and they had everything and they were about to release it. And then out of nowhere, overnight, it got completely scrubbed.
Is this affiliated with the Franklin scandal?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
It was all about that was all it was about, was the Franklin scandal. And then all of a sudden, someone high up the totem pole somewhere came in and made them pull the plug, and no one has ever seen it.
Well, get into it.
So, okay, so the scandal, supposedly was to be over, right? Caradori was dead. Alicia Owen, she was behind bars still. Grand jury had declared the entire affair a hoax, but there were three big things that kept, well, let's just use an analogy, basically like the embers glowing under the surface. And that was the former Nebraska state senator who refused to let it go, right? What?
Nothing.
Oh, sorry. I thought my thing was messed up. So the former Nebraska state senator refused to let it go. And then there was someone who survived, who, basically a survivor, one of the victims, who didn't give a shit. They were like, I'm not going to be silenced. You can threaten me all you want. You can blow up my house. I don't care. like they took that stance. And then basically there's a documentary crew that got closer than any journalist ever had, only for it to, like I said, to be shut down literally at the launch gate, when they're about to start the races. So, Senator John DeCamp. So, John DeCamp had been the Nebraska senator and part of the original Franklin committee after the death of Gary Caradori. DeCamp got the same pressure the others did, but instead of doing what everyone else did and ran away with their tails between their legs, he was like, no, I'm going to go underground and I'm going to keep digging.
Yes.
So basically he kept a low profile, but he was still digging as hard as possible without anyone knowing. Now I want to clarify why John DeCamp was so crucial at this point, because one, he had legislative access. No one else did. So he had access to sealed documents and interviews that no one else had seen or was allowed to see. So he had straight access to it. He had seen Caradori's notes before the crash, just saw them. So he knew what was in the evidence. He knew the truth. So he was like, fuck this. Sorry for the language, everybody. I was doing so good, too.
You were doing well.
Man. Sorry for the F. Sometimes saying a good F word feels good. Just saying.
Especially in this scenario.
Yes, it does. I'm pretty sure I may have actually cussed earlier out of passion.
Anyway.
It was a crime of passion. So he personally believed that Paul Bonacci and Alicia Owen and stayed in contact with them even after basically like everyone turned against them, the public, the works. So in 1992, the camp published, quote unquote, the Franklin cover-up, child abuse, Satanism, and murder in Nebraska. That's what it was named. It connected all the dots, and it broke every single what's the word for it? Taboo.
Oh, okay.
That was associated with it. So, and this was a book, just so you guys know. So he claimed I said published. So, oh yeah, there it is. It's actually in the
The
deal.
build, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that's by
It's by Nick Bryant right
it's
there.
Nick Bryant. Yeah. There's a book that Basic put into the comments for the Franklin scandal, so I'm pretty sure it's worth checking out. But moving on. So here are the key claims from the camp's book. Child trafficking ring was 100% real. It was interstate, and it was 100, like not just 100. It was like 120% politically protected. All of it. The sex trafficking ring was protected politically. They were being protected from a whole ring of politicians. The abuse, all the abuse that was being done was being used for blackmail to control people. That's it. That's why they were doing. Oh, that's one of the biggest reasons why they're doing the trafficking ring is because they were literally. It wasn't just about making money off of kids or anything like that. It was about controlling high powerful people to do whatever you want them to
Well,
do.
yeah.
That was one of the biggest reasons behind it. So I know that's a weird thing to distinct, like as if it's like profound, but it is a good thing to distinct because it's not just someone engaging in child molester stuff or pedophilia stuff. It's a bit farther. It's like the scope of it is bigger because that is just, it's basically a tool being used in this scenario. It's like child sex trafficking is being used as a tool to get something else that they're wanting. So, by controlling people of power. So I'm making sure to state that because I feel like people do not take into that perspective, especially with this case. This case that's part of
Well,
it.
that's what Lawrence King was
Yeah.
known for, right? His blackmailing capabilities. That's where he gained his power,
Yeah.
right? He would put these people in these incriminating scenarios and then use that to gain more money and
Mhm.
power within his realm.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, well put.
He was the 1989 Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah. Architecture's the same, and we're about to talk about that. So, other than sorry, and then where was I? I talked about the blackmail, right? So, victims. He also in the book talks about how victims were subjected to this weird satanic type ritualistic psychological torture.
What the?
Yeah. So basically in ways that reminisce MK Ultra programming. Go figure. We did a space last week talking about MK, the neural war, which is what I named it, which was basically it's how your mind is being re-engineered for war, work, and just control. That's it. And this is MK Ultra's. Yeah, this is it's very reminiscent of the methods they used in MK Ultra for different things. For tormenting people and getting subserviation and hypnosis out of them and all that stuff. So the other thing in the book was federal agencies like the FBI and Secret Service suppressed the investigation completely. Yeah, FBI and Secret Service were suppressing. Why was Secret Service involved?
Sounds
Because
like a president.
it only sounds, it sounds to me like a president. And who was president at that time? George Bush Sr. There, yeah. I mean, we brought up his name a few times, but yeah, this is where his name comes into it because his Secret Service detail were the ones suppressing it.
Yeah.
I mean, not just his Secret Service detail, but key parts, key agents in his Secret Service detail were some of the main, basically, roadblocks. They were a part of suppressing it, working with other Secret Service agents.
His agents were the ones who were helping deter anybody from
I was just trying to clarify that there was other ones that weren't part of his detail, but there were ones on his detail that were.
Sounds like it was a direct command from the upper echelon.
Yeah.
Hey, you 5 of my favorite Secret Service agents and my best men or women, go out there and fight this fight.
Because the only time you ever hear Secret Service being mentioned is if it has to do with the president.
Yeah.
Well, It's in this book. So, yeah, George Bush Sr. was apparently somehow involved in that regard. So, now, and of course, he talks about how the plane crash that killed Caradori was not an accident at all. And he knows it wasn't, apparently. So that's in the book, too. So, but the book was completely dismissed as a conspiracy theory by all of the press. All media outlets were saying it's just a conspiracy theorist book. But it did start to like circulate in like a whole bunch. You know how books, things when they come out may not make a hit right then, but then all of a sudden 5 years later they're a cult classic or whatever. That's essentially what happened with this book. It started like circulating around in all these like kind of like underground, circles, and pretty much it drew attention to it, and yeah, and it drew attention to it, even though the media was out there at full force saying that no, this is a closed case and this is all conspiracy. Everyone else was saying otherwise, like the public, So Paul Bonacci did a civil lawsuit, and he got a legal victory. So how could? Sorry, it's just hilarious. It's not funny, actually. That it's funny. It's just
it's humorous in the time frame, right?
Yeah, it's humorous in the time frame because he would not have won this legal victory unless it happened.
Yeah,
and he, you know what I mean. So in 1993, Paul Bonacci, now in 93, he's now in his 20s, right? He filed a civil lawsuit against Lawrence E. King Jr., and he alleged the whole repeated sexual abuse by him and others, traffic across, all the things that we talked about earlier. Well, apparently also exposure to mind control based conditioning. Basically he was seeing like a psychologist and a therapist and all that stuff, and they were going through things that had happened to him, and some of the things that's where the MK Ultra comes in, because his personality was like, in psychological terms that they put it, was fragmented. And not because he doesn't remember correctly. No, he remembers everything now, but it's like fragmented in the way of it's showing the clear indication of what they've seen in people who are successfully put through hypnosis, and a trauma type conditioning like MK Ultra, where they would do all this sexual abuse to you while also pumping you with drugs to, during or after like the works. So there's that. And then he also, what was it? Oh yeah. So the judge in this whole thing was not a Nebraska insider. This was a completely different judge, and he wasn't part of any of that part of the system on that side for that jurisdiction. So Bonacci won, like flat out. And in 1999, U.S. District Court Judge Warren Urbam awarded Bonacci $1 million in damages, stating in his ruling, the court, quote, "The court finds that the plaintiff, Paul A. Bonacci, has been harmed by the defendant in ways that are shocking and unconscionable." That judge, if you dig into that judge a little bit, that judge wanted to go after more. Like the judge wanted to go pursue more. But basically all of a sudden the judge was like it's not stated, but it was obvious he started to take it after the ruling was done, and he wanted to take it to his colleagues going, this is some bullshit. Why are we not coming down? This happened, type thing. And basically it's like a read between the lines type moment where it's like, bro, if you know what's good for you and your family, you just shut up now. You did that court case, good for you. Just shut up. And that's essentially what I took from it. So,
and to give somebody $1 million on a generation of trauma it's
pretty pathetic.
It is very pathetic. I mean, how do you put a number to the trauma that this individual came across? Yeah, he may have won something.
Yeah,
there's a victory there, but he will have to live with this for the rest of his life. There's the repercussions from these horrible monster politicians and representatives' actions within this 20-year time frame is irrehensible, and $1 million is nothing for the trauma this individual has been affected with. These people who have done this need to be put away for life,
minimum. I mean, I think they all should be executed, but
Well,
that's just me.
Yes.
I'm always going to advocate for that because I don't think they should even breathe the same air that anyone breathes.
Well,
So,
we've
I know we've
gone
already
over
covered that.
many times. We've talked
Yeah.
about this sort of topic a few times now.
Yeah.
And we always come to the conclusion of I don't want to pay taxes for them to be alive. So
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, no. Is there anything else you're going to add?
No, that's
before
it.
keep
I was
going?
just my computer died, so my notes are gone.
Okay, dope. I'm so sorry that your computer died. Yeah, sorry. You should have told me. I would have thrown you a thingy. Anyways, where was I? You distracted me. Yeah, your computer's dead. But where is it? Okay, so let's talk about the band documentary. The documentary I'm talking about, if anyone wants to look it up, it's called Conspiracy of Silence. And this all took place in 1993 to 1994.
Oh, wow.
It's called Conspiracy of Silence, and it was being done by the Discovery Channel because they commissioned a documentary to be titled this, and they pushed the whole thing. It was directed by Tim Tate and produced by Yorkshire Television in the UK. The film featured interviews with Paul Bonacci, Alicia Owen, a handful of other survivors, footage of former law enforcement confirming interference by federal agencies. Dude, they even had footage. They went even far. They dug some things up. They dug a lot of things.
Movie has to be out there somewhere.
Accounts of ritualistic abuse, trafficking, and cover-ups. Testimony from Senator DeCamp, who openly called it a national conspiracy.
Holy shit.
Yeah, Senator DeCamp came by and was like, no, this is a national conspiracy to cover this up because it's happening. And for all I know, colleagues on my left and right are a part of it.
Discovery Channel,
You
if
know.
you can hear the sound of our voices, if this ever reaches your ears, you need to release this documentary rather, to the public to see, because that is some serious information. I'm sure you have the files hidden somewhere under lock and key.
Oh, yeah. Dude, they need to, we need to find out whoever has it
Yes,
within there in some archive, wherever. There's got to be a rough cut of it.
Absolutely.
Even pre-edit something. Even if it's half of it's damning enough. So it's just like, yeah, I hope it. Yeah. But the documentary was completed. It did get completed. And it was scheduled to air in May of 1994.
Okay.
Well, it was just days before the air date. Discovery Channel pulled the program with zero explanation. The UK production company was apparently reimbursed for its expenses, and then all official copies were ordered destroyed.
Wait.
Yep.
They pulled the movie and got reimbursed. Who reimbursed them?
That's a good question.
Who was like, yeah, take this movie away.
It was
we'll
Discovery.
Pay for
So apparently they were reimbursed, and I believe it was Discovery who paid it, from what I was seeing in my notes. Like, so they were the one producing this thing, right? So they were funding it.
Okay.
They gave the money to Discovery. Discovery gave it back, and then ordered all copies to be destroyed.
That's wild.
Yeah, and yeah,
Holy
but
cow.
apparently a rough cut.
Where's the Angel Studio?
Something did survive. So apparently, yeah, no shit. Angel Studios, they're awesome. But apparently a rough cut survived. And that's why we were talking about earlier. I was holding out for this moment. It apparently began to circulate through all these different forums, bootleg sites. Dude, we're talking early 1990s.
Pirate Bay, baby.
AOL Online, baby. Well, I think it may have been pre-AOL.
Yeah.
This is back when there was it was like
Linux.
it was just like the ultimate Wild Wild West scenario of the internet, where if you wanted to go to a chat room, like, you had to know what the site was. It wasn't just advertised places, So apparently it was floating around, and apparently it was even on YouTube.
No shit.
Yes. It eventually later got to YouTube. So like AOL chat rooms. I'm just saying, like, when this happened in 94.
What's the name of it again?
It's the rough cut is called The Conspiracy of Silence.
Okay.
Yeah. Apparently, it was not even on YouTube. And the leaked version apparently ends abruptly. Obviously, clearly unfinished, right? It was the rough cut. But the material is extremely explosive. But the problem is it's gone now. It's been removed it's been scrubbed from the internet. Apparently, the only places supposedly that it may exist are on Onion servers, which is dark web site. Yeah, the dark web. So if you know where to go on there, I mean, that's the problem with navigating. Anyone listening right now, if you're thinking like, well, why don't we just go and start digging around? You want to be careful on Onion server. Speaking from someone who understands that stuff pretty well, you don't want to just be going and just wandering around. It's not illegal for you to go to them, but if you start engaging with anything in there, consider yourself being marked, watched, and probably getting backdoored. And it's not even just from a hacker. I'm talking about from government agencies, because they're monitoring that stuff like crazy too. So just a heads up on that. But let's move on to get through the rest. So, yeah, they never aired it. It's gone, scrubbed. Like you can't, supposedly the Onion, somewhere on a dark web. That's great and all, but no one has seen it or seen a version of the rough cut since it was ripped offline. Like it got gutted out overnight once people became aware, because it popped up on YouTube later. So originally,
Shepard, you've unmuted yourself.
yeah, Shepard, you unmuted yourself. Oh, there we go. But the rough cut, apparently it got taken down off of all these different online forums, but then it popped up on YouTube back in the heyday of YouTube. And then it wasn't even up very long. It got, once people saw what it was and were watching it, all of a sudden it snapped fingers overnight.
Sounds about right.
I even came across threads of people talking about on Reddit, talking about how, like, old threads, talking about how they had recorded it. Like, there was all these people in this thread were claiming that they got a copy of it when it was on YouTube, but all of a sudden it was gone from their computer as well.
Whoa.
Which means I know one program that can do that.
You and me both. We've talked about it.
Pegasus 2,
Yeah.
baby. Not Pegasus 1. We're talking about Pegasus 2.
Yep.
Which is a government CIA toy. Malicious toy. But yeah, so moving on from that, Larry Lawrence.
How much more you got over there? Dang.
Dude, we've got 2 more things to go through, like 2 big things to go through, but I am going to go predominantly quick through it. So, where to go? Sorry, I did a lot of research onto this, man. I was trying to pull everything I could find and then flip over every stone and not leave anything unchecked. Sorry, went much longer than anticipated, but it's a heavy episode.
It is.
I did not anticipate this. So, Larry King. Lawrence E. King Jr. In 2001, Lawrence E. King was released from prison after serving about 10 years for the financial fraud charges. He did attempt to kind of like re-enter, I guess you could say, society quietly, right? But rumors did start to circulate, and they ended up placing him under protection, and then also a sealed settlement agreement for everything to be quiet. So he went into witness protection, and then they also gave him a glamorous life. Yeah, he walked away on top.
God.
So now, despite now let's talk about one thing. So despite John DeCamp's book and Bonacci's court win, no matter what happened, the mainstream press never opened anything with the story. No one reopened it. It was all labeled as debunked. You've seen that all the time. We see it in the UFO stuff. We see it everywhere saying debunked. Which is bullshit, because what they're doing is they're often lumping it in to the 1980s satanic panic stuff, and that's where it's getting lumped into. So victims were dismissed, marked mentally unstable, attention seekers, and then basically the Franklin scandal for over a decade became a subject. If you brought it up, you were told to shut up. Yeah, I'm not making that up. Like that was a real thing. We're talking about in even businesses that weren't even law. People were being told from higher powerful people to shut the fuck up.
No, you don't tell
Stop
me to
talking
shut up.
about
No.
it. Yeah. And so, so that's where we are with that. I know there was a bit to cover on all of it. I only have those 2 things. I have 2 big things I have, on here. And this has to do with, this is where we're going to get into Jeffrey Epstein. So before we do that, Basic, is there anything you wanted to say, or is there anyone who had any input or had a question before we get this fleshed out?
Yeah, I also got Mikey up here. He is a counter trafficking advocate and educator. So just to kind of have his 2 cents put in as well.
Yeah.
The floor is yours,
Hey
Mikey.
guys, good to talk to you. Phenomenal space. Great topic. Needs to be talked about more often. I'm particularly interested with all these ties. There's probably thousands of ties to Jeff Epstein. You know, me and several of my cohorts have done some digging into the FBI files, the FBI vault of Epstein's like documents and things like that. We've got there's some crazy stuff in that vault. The one piece I'll tell you I put in the purple pill here, which is points to Jeffrey Epstein being an informant for the FBI back in 2008 when they knew what he was doing. So you know that kind of begs a lot of other questions. But yeah, just really enjoying the space. I'm, as Basic said, I work with Called to Rescue. It's a 501c3 organization out of Pensacola, Florida, and we
Hell
work
yeah.
with. There's about 6, 7 organizations that collaboratively called the Shepherds, and we do search and rescue and restoration for exploited, trafficked children and adults across the United States. And we partner with law enforcement in those different areas. So we'll descend into like Las Vegas for a week and do some canvassing and work with their law enforcement over there, or Detroit, or wherever they we have partnerships with. So any questions you guys might have about that kind of stuff, along with my friends Ansgar and Shepherd's Watch, feel free to ask whatever questions. And to Ellie, of course. Ellie's like huge expert here. So um, that's all I got for you guys. Just thank you. Appreciate
Yeah.
the opportunity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing. I mean, as we've said many times, the four of you who are here, preaching the gospel, if you will, of saving these people and doing the work. We commend y'all over and over and over again. We are here simply just to bring to light more instances and educate people as much as we possibly can. Angsgar, I see that you have your hand up. I don't know if you want to say anything. Feel free.
Yeah, just real quick, you guys mentioned, and I see Lynn Piper Loomis just jumped in here, so it's another powerhouse. I heard you guys mention the satanic panic, and I just wonder if you heard about or looked into the recent FBI files that were released on um, Michael Aquino and the start of the Temple of Set and so
No.
forth.
No, I
Have
have
you
No.
never
guys?
heard of that actually. That
No.
sounds fascinating.
That might be an avenue to look down because this was right around the time of what you're speaking on here, and that's very prevalent to where we are today, especially with the 764 arrest that we've seen take place and so on. So,
Can you
yeah,
say the name of the satanic thing again?
this Temple of Set,
Temple of Set. Okay.
yes,
Yeah.
sir, and that's Michael Aquerna, who has an extensive military background, but he basically wrote the book Mind War on PsyOps.
Wow. Yeah, we will definitely look into that. That sounds right up our alley and right up our
Yeah.
listeners' alley as well.
Yeah. If
Awesome.
there's no other input, I can just jump right into the last
Yeah,
thing so
please
we
do.
can get through the
Hi.
rest.
Yeah, go ahead.
All the stuff that people are mentioning is including the book that was just mentioned. As people are dropping it, I'm putting it in the pill for you guys to also refer back to as well.
Excellent. Thank you.
I'm actually about to bring up the book you had commented or posted about earlier. I'm actually about to touch about it because it's in my notes as well. I was just waiting to get there. But yeah, that'd be awesome. Okay, let's get going. Is that everything? We good? All right. So
Camera.
yeah, thank you, sir. So what we're about to talk about, this is 2003, 2016. Okay, this specific. So while this is going on, so this is starting around 2003, and this spanned to like, from what I could find, about 2010. So like web forums, blogs, sites, underground sites, things like that, dark web, um, basically began cataloging all this suppressed information. The Franklin case basically became a central node in the emerging map of child trafficking, institutional cover-ups, blackmail rings, ritual abuse linked to psychological programming. This was one of the few cases with court records, eyewitnesses, and like a literal banned documentary, right? Because it was banned, making it just this cornerstone for anyone who's trying to prove the existence of some type of systemic elite abuse that's happening. So, and it was basically, this was something that, like, sorry, I'm wording this wrong. I'm trying to think of how to translate this into proper words here. So I guess I should just identify as like key platforms that like kind of amplified it. So godlike productions, Above Top Secret, and Project Camelot featured Franklin regularly, like the Franklin scandal type stuff. Early YouTube channels uploaded bootlegged versions of Conspiracy of Silence, where, all that happened and they were getting removed. And then the Franklin era became basically this kind of like a foundational, kind of like modern, like map makers of global corruption, essentially. So the book that you actually had put in there by Nick Bryant, The Franklin Scandal. So he is a journalist, and he published this like whole new investigation. And the thing about the book that was different than John DeCamp's was that Brian had no political ties. He was a complete outsider. He traveled to Nebraska, tracked down a bunch of former committee members, interviewed new witnesses, and then gained access to certain sealed documents. He got his hands on some of them. He backed up Paul Bonacci's accounts using actual travel records, foster care logs, missing persons reports, the works. He connected Franklin to networks operating in Washington, D.C., and which he argued had links to intelligence agencies, and then New York City comes up. Foreshadowing here, Epstein. So Brian's book pretty much just made it clear, and it obviously was not just a problem that was happening in Nebraska. This was nationwide and basically globally. Like, this was like a prototype of like a global structure, essentially. Children as commodities, abuse as leverage, blackmail as the controlling conduit. So there are other cases that mirrored the Franklin scandal from, like mid 2000s to like 2010s. Marc Dutroux in Belgium, he was a high profile pedophile who kidnapped, raped, and murdered girls in the 90s.
God.
Allegations surfaced that he was part of a protected trafficking network tied to Belgian royalty and intelligence. Like Franklin, witnesses died, investigators got removed, and the case was declared as isolated and then also a hoax. Jimmy Savile in the UK, I hope I'm saying that last name, or Savile in the UK, BBC television star and close friend of royalty and politicians, posthumously revealed to have raped or molested over 500 children. Apparently, he was protected for decades by the media, police, and political friends, and had the exact same pattern. Basically, abuse hired behind some type of prestige-like status, right? And then you have Hampstead case in the UK, where children described satanic ritual abuse at a London school. And these were the same exact satanic type rituals. The things they described were the same things that were happening in the Franklin scandal. Same things that were happening with stuff that was described with Jeffrey Epstein. And I don't care how you feel about what's his name? Turns the frogs gay.
Alex Jones.
Alex Jones. You may think he's a wackadoo or just, crazy over the top, like very extreme. But he blew the whistle on stuff like this. Literally, the especially the satanic ritual part with sex trafficking. He's been talking about it since the 90s. Like, he literally has been saying these exact things since the 90s. And yeah, you may not like him, or you do like him. It doesn't really matter. He still ends up being right like 99% of the time, which is creepy, So moving on, let's move on. So let's talk about Epstein. Now, this is particularly 2005, 2010. So by the late 2000s, the name Jeffrey Epstein started to pop up. And, this all of a sudden, this like wealthy financier, a financial guy who had ties to Clinton, Gates, Prince Andrew, you name it. Like, he had ties to everybody. Owned private jets, private island, obviously. And then he had homes that were wired with cameras, hidden cameras. We already knew about that. I'm just stating as if people didn't know. And he was, of course, accused of what? Sex trafficking ring involving minors and all these different horrible things. So his connections. So here's where things get weird with Epstein and the Franklin scandal and how it's all connected. So his connections, assets, and blackmail infrastructure were literally the exact same architecture as the Franklin scandal. All of it. Like how they did the blackmailing.
Like copy pasted.
Yeah, copy pasted. Well, that's where you start to think about, because Jeffrey Epstein, who knows if he was the fall guy or, obviously he was involved heavily, but who knows if he was a fall guy or some inside agent somewhere or whatever. Doesn't really fucking matter, because this is his design. This is Jeffrey Epstein's, as far as we know right now. We can say that this was his design, because this is what he's been doing going back a very, very, very long time before the Franklin scandal, allegedly, right? Or, I wish we could see the documents. That'd be great.
I imagine they worked side by side together, these two monsters.
I think I think of it like a business, right? Where you've got an area manager, you got a location manager,
CEO.
you've got the VP, whatever. He obviously was maybe a CIO, like the chief information officer. Maybe he was the CEO, but at the least he was like the chief information officer. So he was higher than anyone else in these totem poles, because he was the facilitator, going back and forth, because he was the one who's making it happen globally, apparently. So it literally was, it's not even like, oh, it bore a similar resemblance. No, it was verbatim the exact same thing. That was the creepy part. But then, of course, everyone knows in 2008, Epstein got all of a sudden this sweetheart plea deal.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the homes that, in one of the witness testimonies, when he mentions New York City, one of the young boys, well, it's Jeffrey Epstein's place.
Yeah.
Literally, it is. It's Jeffrey Epstein's place. So that's where the connection starts, that he really gets connected in, other than the architecture. So we already know he got the sweetheart deal, 13 months. And of course, he was totally murdered in that cell. I don't care what Kash Patel says. He was saying that beforehand. It was very obvious on the Rogan episode, if you guys watched it, where Kash Patel was on there. You can tell he's lying. You can tell he looks uncomfortable. That is, when you watch the videos of him talking about before, because he talks about how, oh, Epstein, I think he did kill himself. More than likely, that doesn't make none of this stuff makes any sense. And all of a sudden, they're out there like a robot. After the fact, we're supposed to be getting updates on the Epstein stuff that was promised to the American people. All of a sudden, they're like, we saw the footage. He did not kill himself. And his mannerisms, because I'm pretty good at reading people when they talk. And just seeing his mannerisms on Rogan, it's just like, you're full of shit. I can tell you're lying. You're covering your own ass right now, because I think you've got something coming, like getting put on you. Not that he's involved in that way. I'm saying like more of threatening, blackmail, whatever, something. So I don't know. I think he's full of shit. But moving on from that, so Franklin. So by 2010s, that was it. So Franklin became essentially canon in like online investigations back then, and it actually showed up in early QAnon drops before Q was supposedly hijacked, right? For the hijacking of Q, apparently it was showing up QAnon drops, and it was used as reference point for how blackmail, ritual abuse, all that stuff would happen. So basically, even though all the mainstream institutions buried the Franklin thing, the pattern exposed, the ties going into Jeffrey Epstein, like all of it, everything with sex trafficking, which is on a global scale. This obviously, I think that Conspiracy of Silence is about to literally pop the cork, showing it globally and not an isolated event. And that was already bad enough for them. But the fact it was going to expose even more of this intricate network that has probably been, who knows how long it's been in place. Oh yeah, they were trying to get rid of that thing as fast as freaking possible. So, even though they were trying to, get rid of all this stuff, you got one survivor, one in court. You got one politician who wrote it down, who witnessed all of this stuff. You got one documentary that got thankfully leaked against all odds. And then you've got one journalist who reconfirmed it with really hard evidence, which was Nick Bryant. And then you got thousands of anonymous researchers that are trying to preserve it online, at least the data of it, And so the last thing here now, how I say Epstein's connected to it, Epstein is also different at the same time, because when you start focusing just on Epstein, it's a completely different battlefield now, because that was just one battle happening on the entire war front. Epstein was like the center, that basically where you could see every battle that you're about to have everywhere. So it was a polarizing difference, left and right on that. And obviously, you have the Lolita Express, the private jet, name names.
Yeah.
Compound wire with cameras, blackmail operations. You guys know what it's about. It's already horrible enough. But the thing is that he was given that get out of jail free card, right? That cushy thing. And all of a sudden he killed himself, or not killed himself. Sorry. He hung himself. Sorry for my quotations of the wrong word. Hung himself, when really it was very apparent, because all of a sudden they started going after Ghislaine Maxwell, right? But they weren't even really going after her. There was a whole bunch of obstruction that happened during the whole thing. The client list was completely sealed. No one could see it. No names or elite abusers were ever to be made public. And then mainstream media just went quiet after her conviction, which, by the way, if you want to talk about a distraction, the Johnny Depp trial with Amber Heard, all of a sudden, conveniently, was the biggest thing getting pushed. And that's what was happening when Ghislaine Maxwell was going on, her trial. So it's like a lot of attention got shifted into the wrong place. And I think it was intentional. I know me and you have already talked about that
many times.
Yeah. So with that being said, that's the Franklin scandal, everybody. That's all of it.
Yeah, I mean, with all that you said at the very end there, it does sound as if the spider web or the octopus of the child trafficking sex ring has been going on for a very long time. If I were to be a betting man, I bet it started in the 60s and has become more and more prevalent as time has gone on.
Yeah.
The fact that there are documents of individuals who are global leaders and across the globe who are tied together with Lawrence King and Jeffrey Epstein together really bring to light to the possibility that this is not going to be ending anytime soon.
Yeah.
So having to bring to light all of the concepts and all of the material matter here that you have just brought here and I have just brought here.
Yeah. Sorry, your computer died.
Yeah, I know, it's okay. Having them bring all this to light, this won't be the last time we talk about this. This won't be the first time either. We've talked about this maybe 2 other times since now.
Yeah.
So with more information, more things coming to light, like the Franklin scandal that we found out about, we won't shut up about it.
No.
And I'm happy to see all these beautiful faces in here, these strong individuals who are doing the frontline fights out there.
The fact that we had people who were involved jumping in on this space was awesome.
Oh yeah,
I'm very
absolutely. We are wrapping it up now. I know this is a longer one. We typically do 2 hours, about a 3-hour one here now.
Yeah.
I do want to give a shout out to our sponsors real quick before we end the show. Shout out to Bad Cat Studio up in North Carolina for some of the artwork you see around here in the studio. Shout out to Dustin Beck and David Southerner for the use of our theme song that you see at the start and the end of the show.
Yep.
And that is about it at the moment.
Yeah.
If you all want to reach out to us, we have an email. Our DMs are always open. We are always looking for people to come talk. We will have anybody, no hold bar. We do not hide from anybody. So feel free to talk to us.
And I just want to say thank you to Basic for co-hosting. And I know that I think we had said 2 hours at the beginning, we're going way over. I apologize for that, but huge thank you for sticking through for us, and huge shout out to Allie and Shepard and was it Mike and Ansgar? Yeah, thank you guys. And I want to talk to you guys. Like, please DM us or shoot us an email or whichever is the best way to get in contact with you guys over the weekend going into next week. That would be great. But I do have to jump. We got to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're just going to end it out.
We got to go hug our kids and tell them good night.
Yeah, pretty much. So anyways, thank you guys for joining, and we will catch you guys on the flippity flops.
Have a good night.
See ya.